አደባባይ ሚዲያ ለወገንተኝነት ጀርባውን የሰጠ ጊዜያዊ ጥቅምን አምቢኝ ብለው የዘመመን ሊያቀና እውነትና እውቀትን አስከትሎ ኢኮኖሚያዊና መንፈሳዊ መረጃዎችን እንካችሁ ይላል። ትኩስ ዜናዎች፣ ዘጋቢ ፊልሞች፣ ጥልቅ ትንታኔዎች በአደባባይ ሚዲያ ይቀርባሉ። ራእያችን ጊዜውን ያማከለና ዘመኑን የዋጀ በእውነት የነጠሩ መረጃዎችን በእውቀት ደግፎ ለሀገራችን ብሎም ለዓለም ሕዝብ ማዳረስ ነው። አድሬሳችን አደባባይ info@gmail.com፣ በዌብሳይታችን www.adebabai.com። ያግኙን፣ ይርዱን። የሁላችንም ስለሆነች ኢትዮጵያ በአደባባይ እንዘግባለን። አደባባይ ሚዲያ
በጣም አመሰግናለሁ። ትኖት እንኳን ደህና መጣችሁ ወደዚህ ኢንፎርሜሽን አከፋፈያ ስብሰባችን ላይ ሰዎቹ በእንግሊዝኛ የሚናገሩ ሰዎች ስላሉ በእንግሊዝኛም በአማርኛም ነው የምናደርገው እና አልፎ አልፎ አንዳንድ ቦታዎች ላይ እንደሱን ከመጋበዝ በፊት ውይይቱን በእንግሊዝኛ ላደርገው እችላለሁ እና እሱን ለማሳሰብ ያህል ነው። እንግዲህ በመጀመሪያ ይህንን ስብሰባ በአደባባይ ሚዲያ ስትሪም ይደረጋል እና እሱን ተባባሪ ለሆኑት አደባባይ ሚዲያ ሰራተኞች እና ኩባንያ ምስጋናችንን እናቀርባለን። So for the purpose of making sure that our friends from the Mercury Public Relations would follow the story, I'm going to switch the presentation to English at this point. What we are going to discuss for the first 15 minutes is what was accomplished, and what we plan to do as we go into the coming months. what is accomplished, as most of you know, when we kicked off this meeting back in June, we have said 3 goals. There will be a government relations activity that will focus on making sure the current imbalance, the current, what we call really a very inappropriate and very imbalanced policy of the U.S. government in the Western world, to get that right and to lobby to that end. Now, so to that end, we have reports that we would like to give you. What was done since the inception of this effort is something that we feel, we are very proud about it, and then the Mercury team would walk us through that. That also included a public relations activity. The public relations activity, as we discussed two months back, focused on where do we start with this very biased, one-sided, very pro against Ethiopia, pro anything that wasn't really the right media. Where do we stand on that? So what do we do about that? And as we have done a lot of work on public relations, and again, I will let our friends from partners, Mercury Public Relations experts who are working closely with us, will give an update on that. And same thing in diaspora. In the diaspora organization, across the country, we wanted to get the diaspora organization to unite, to speak in one voice. And I'm very proud to see today and to tell you that we are getting there. The different organizations that are working together in collaboration with APAC are getting close to pulling all of us and to be on the same page on things that matter. So we'll have a presentation on that as well. So I'll introduce the speakers as soon as I complete my part of the presentation. Indeed, so where are we going from here? We'll after the activities that we have planned to go forward include obviously building on the successes that we already made so far on government relations, lobbying, on public relations, and organizing diaspora. That will build on that. But then our goal, also our objective, as outlined a couple of months ago when we met, was to also get engaged in the election activities across the country, to get pro-Ethiopia legislators elected, and at least so in that effort there is a lot of work that has been done, and I would just like to walk you through some of the activities that are taking place at this point. So the main objectives of these activities, the election campaign 2020-2024, is obviously one is to influence the 117 US Congress in every way we can on the pro-Ethiopia ideas. Then the second objective is to get involved in the 2020 election, to get pro-Ethiopia candidates and support pro-Ethiopia candidates. And so in order to do this, we need to get organized in a meaningful way. And the third objective then will be to get us organized in some meaningful way. So to that end, we have formed a national campaign organizational structure. This national campaign organizational structure has what we call all American Ethiopians participating organizations committee. We call it a partner election campaign coordinating committee, and that would include all of the organizations. That group would keep on growing as we add more organizations that are not already part of it. And this organization is already formed. The purpose of this organization is to provide a strategic guidance on how we should proceed as we go into these different elections. And we expect that this organization or this committee will further be engaged in different policy advice as we go into the future. And then we have what we call a National Election Campaign Committee. The National Election Campaign Committee takes the advice, the recommendations from the National Campaign Coordinating Committee, and then puts it to, and implements those recommendations. Now, this committee is supported by an APAC election research committee and what we call an election campaign strategy committee. Campaign committee. So the election research committee is one that would be doing who is who in all 50 states. What we focus on the different targeted states, and what needs to be done is the job of that committee and the election campaign committee's responsibilities to make that happen. So then this will be followed by state election campaign committees and district election campaign committees. Now, Nabiyu and Meron are going to digress a little bit on this later on, and will explain to all of us how this would work, and what we expect from all of you across the United States, and the expectation and the participation that we would like to get from you will be discussed in detail later. In this National Campaign Strategy Committee, as I said, the core committee is formed. The charter is developed and accepted. The committee members are being finalized. And at this point, we are also discussing the option of hiring a professional national campaign manager that would assist in meeting this goal. So at this point, I'm going to bring in Senator David Vitter. Senator David Vitter is a senior vice president at Mercury, a consulting company that has partnered with us since the beginning of this journey. And Senator Vitter is going to walk us through what's accomplished, what's done, what we have been doing, and what we have accomplished. And with him will be, he will introduce the gentleman and lady that will be speaking with him. So Senator Vitter, please take it over.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. As the chairman said, I'm former U.S. Senator David Vitter of Mercury Public Affairs, and I'm joined today by three of my colleagues who are also key leaders of our Mercury APAC team. We want to give a brief presentation, as the chairman invited us to, about our collective activity in the areas of government relations, public affairs, and also helping organize the diaspora. First, let me say that all of my colleagues at Mercury and I are so honored and excited to be full partners with you in this really important work. Thank you for the opportunity. And secondly, let me say in 5 short months, which is a pretty short period of time, at least as things develop in Washington and elsewhere, we collectively working together have clearly made a difference. 5 months ago, the entire debate on the situation in Ethiopia was completely one-sided, and policymakers and most of the media only heard from the side really represented by the TPLF and only heard their talking points consistently. Working with you all, we collectively have really changed that. And we're pushing back on that narrative every waking hour of every day and doing that really effectively. So we're excited about what we've begun. We're certainly not where any of us want to be, but we're excited about this work. As I said, I have 3 key Mercury colleagues with me, and let me introduce those 3 now and then turn to each one to give brief parts of our presentation. Congressman Toby Moffat is a former U.S. Congressman, Democrat from Connecticut, and he is a key leader on the government relations part of the team, particularly reaching out to Democrats both in the Biden administration and in Congress. Alex Walker is our key lead team member located in London with vast experience in press, public relations, digital, and he is really taking the lead on that end of the endeavor, which is so important. And Deidre Stack is another key team leader. Deidre was a senior staffer on Capitol Hill for many years for a Republican congressman and has been a very effective advocate and lobbyist since then, working for many clients and now AIPAC. And again, we're all excited to make this presentation, keep working on your behalf. So first, let me turn to former Congressman Toby Moffat to talk a little bit about our government relations activity. Toby.
It's a real honor to be with all of you today. And thank you, David, for those opening remarks. And Nesvin, thank you. It's an honor to represent the organization, and it's really been terrific to be working side by side with you and your team. Just a little bit about me, just very quickly. So I served 4 terms in the House of Representatives. Subsequently, I was vice president of a Fortune 100 company, Monsanto, that did a lot of agricultural work in Africa, including in Ethiopia. I also was at Mayer Brown, the law firm, for 7 years before joining Mercury 1 year ago. I think one of the things that brings me close to this challenge, and I hope gives me some understanding of it, is that I'm from a diaspora also. My real name's not Moffat. I think a lot of you out there, or a lot of you on this call, know what it's like to have names changed at Ellis Island or elsewhere. So my real name was Mahfoud, and it's a Lebanese name. Both my parents came as children from Lebanon. And even when I was in Congress, my grandmother, one of my Lebanese grandmothers on my mother's side, who lived till 106, would call me sometimes many times a week, sometimes several times a day. And she would ask me from her dry goods store in Holyoke, Massachusetts, what are you doing for Lebanon today? So I know what it's like in the diaspora, particularly when things start to go wrong with the mother country. I love Lebanon and I'm loyal to Lebanon, but we don't want Ethiopia to go through, and the Ethiopian diaspora to go through what we Lebanese have gone through for 5 or 6 decades now. And it always seems to be getting worse and worse. So I'm not unfamiliar with a diaspora, a big one. The Lebanese one is very big, but it's not nearly as big as the Ethiopian one is. So I'm also familiar with the frustration. You look at policymakers and you see that perhaps they don't understand what's going on on the ground. And it's very, very frustrating. So part of our role with you is to be Americans speaking to American policymakers. And we've been doing that, as you may know, very, very aggressively. We've had some very encouraging interactions with senators, members of Congress, and with the administration. And we think they're beginning to have an impact, but nothing substitutes for what you all are doing out there around the country. Just in the past few days, we've had conversations with members of Congress and members of the Senate who immediately say, oh, I heard from my community. Barbara Lee, Congresswoman Lee in Oakland, Senator Van Hollen, Senator Cruz on the Republican side, or Rand Paul on the Republican side. They've been John Garamendi, the congressman from Northern California. We can see how they're impacted. So it's not just that we lobby on behalf of this organization or the Ethiopian diaspora, but we have the extra weapon that comes with having lots of well-informed people on the ground. And, you know, it's starting to work. We see that in the administration statement over the past 48 hours. It was almost like a sea change. They really begin to understand the damage that's being done by the TPLF. And they specifically mentioned in the last administration statement the invasion of the TPLF into key regions and their refusal to withdraw. So we think there's a lot to talk about. We think there's a story to tell. We couldn't tell the story without you being out there, backing us up and being the first point of contact with your elected representatives. So with that, let me switch back to the public relations, digital aspects of the campaign, and my colleague, Alec.
Thank you, Congressman. A little bit about me, just to build on Senator Vitter's introduction. So I am a vice president at Mercury, working out of the London office, and I've been leading on the PR and digital teams for APAC and our relationship with APAC. But my background before Mercury, I was heavily focused in political communications. I spent 7 years working for MPs and ministers in the UK, including spending some time in Number 10 and the Cabinet Office. Mercury Media Relations has been absolutely one of my main focuses, working for governments and corporates right around the world. And just like my colleagues, I have relished the chance and an opportunity to work with you all and tackle the big challenges that we've had to face over the last 5 months, and will undoubtedly continue to come up against over the coming months. So if I just start off on the press side, this is obviously a very external, public-facing part of the campaign. And when we started out in June, the media coverage was incredibly damaging, not just for the Ethiopian government, but I think for Ethiopia as a country as well. The TPLF had effectively built a media infrastructure over the course of 3 decades, which gave them relationships and also gave them some know-how, how to use those relationships to secure coverage. And the framing by the media in that very early stage was not only causing issues in itself, but it was also the primary information being consumed by decision makers in Washington, London, Brussels, etc. So the task over the last 5 months has been to fast track a media infrastructure for APAC, initiate and build relationships with tier 1 media, and tell a far more balanced story. I think we can say we've achieved that. The media will never be completely on side, and if we're frank with each other, it won't be sympathetic, nor will there be a complete consensus among those media outlets. But nevertheless, now we are seeing a more balanced tone, and they're no longer pushing just one side of the story. And the really critical part, historical context, which was completely void when we first came in June, has now been reinstalled, and newsrooms now do understand the history of the TPLF. Establishing an authoritative voice for tier 1 media can take organisations, NGOs and political figures years to secure. APAC has been able to do that in the first 5 months of its existence. We have a media contact list of over 200 journalists and a core group of tier 1 press that we engage with every week. We've been directly responsible for 23 articles and indirectly responsible for many. We've secured stories in top tier 1 outlets such as the Financial Times, AP and Reuters. We've secured op-eds with foreign policy outlets and facilitated broadcast interviews with Bloomberg, CTGN, NPR, and PBS. Now, we've been able to do that using a number of tools. First, relationship building, just simply checking in with journalists every so often, making sure they have content, making sure they're being heard, and making sure that APAC is in their inbox regularly. Issuing press releases and statements, which we have done on regular occasions, pitching stories, and making connections. And this has been a particular area I want to highlight because it's resulted in two really powerful and key stories that have helped change the course of the coverage over the last 5 months. And the first was with Kara Anna of the Associated Press. We were able, through some of the members of APAC, to secure interviews with victims in Amhara, which resulted in the first real story highlighting what the TPLF was committing in that region. And then the second one is more recent, and that was the AGOA article you may have seen this week, covered by Reuters and published very widely by regionals in the US as well. And we were able to do that again through facilitating a visit to a factory in Addis, which showed the devastating impact that AGOA would have should it be delisted from AGOA. Letter to editors, we've also used as a really important tool to challenge the direction of particular outlets. You won't be surprised to hear these names. The Economist, CNN, Washington Post, New York Times, and Daily Telegraph have all received letters to the editor from us challenging their editorial position. We were also able to successfully get one published in Financial Times, which has been a very, very powerful piece we have used on many occasions since. We've also used op-eds, which are essentially opinions, to try and push specific topics from AGOA, but even to issues such as the environment. And we were able to get one in the Washington Examiner, which was a particular highlight. And Twitter isn't just a tool for content and social engagement. Actually, it's where most journalists now get their information. 80% of journalists, in fact, use Twitter as their primary source of information. So we've had to use APAC's Twitter handle as essentially the organization's shop window, and we've been able to do that very effectively. There's much more to do, but the targeted focus over the past 5 months has allowed APAC to break through very early in its existence. On digital, and this is something you all see every single day from APAC, it has been a critical tool in amplifying both the GR work and the PR work, but also in driving content and engagement in itself. Today, there is a well-developed website, a Twitter handle growing at around 1,000 followers a month, a Facebook page, and a new Instagram page. These are all performing well and helping to strengthen APAC's authoritative voice. The digital strategy that we've implemented has been centered on professionalism. Knowing journalists and politicians are always on Twitter, as I've said, APAC's Twitter handle needs to be a shop window, needs to have high quality content, factual messaging, and show it has a thoughtful and considered position. On engagement, there has been an average of 12.5 thousand impressions every single day. Since July, APAC's content has appeared in 1.4 million news feeds. Posts have enjoyed around 35,000 likes, comments, retweets, and or clicks. Now, whereas there has been a lot of misinformation on social media throughout the conflict in Ethiopia so far, APAC, with our support, has maintained a strong professional social media account, which has undoubtedly helped in our efforts both in Washington and in the press. Our digital efforts haven't just been solely focused on social media. Far from it, we've diversified, and our Phone to Action campaign has helped us reach 10,000 advocates. We've collectively sent over 40,000 letters to congressional representatives. That's a huge amount of correspondence reaching representatives' inboxes, and has been a powerful tool on highlighting issues such as TPLF's use of child soldiers and trying to save Ethiopia's listing within AGOA. Now, just before I hand over to Deirdre, I want to cover briefly the work of our team and the diaspora team at APAC. We've worked very closely to try and amplify the work of the GR and PR teams through the use of the diaspora community in the US. The efforts have been focused on a few different audiences. We've tried to engage leading members of the diaspora, but also businesses and supportive third-party advocates such as academics. Thanks to that engagement, We've been able to get authentic voices in front of decision makers. The Archbishop's visit is the best example to highlight. This also helped us get media articles, including Adebabay of Blessed Coffee, for whom we wrote a powerful op-ed on AGOA, and putting academics such as Professor Anne Fitzgerald in front of broadcasters such as PBS, NPR, and also Reuters. The diaspora team has also undertaken critical work developing a comprehensive diaspora database. These lists are composed of around 21,000 names and are broken down into different groups such as young professionals, students, and companies. The diaspora team is really helping to fill that link between members of Congress, senators, and their constituents, and has been a critical part of our work. I will now hand over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Deirdre Stack. I work on the...
Deirdre, you just hit mute accidentally, I think.
Thank you. Again, my name is Deirdre Stack. I work on the government affairs side with AIPAC, and I wanted to say it's been an honor and a privilege working with all of you. Your issues are amazing, and it's been fascinating to see the last several months, the change in the tone of the work that we've been doing on the Hill. I think that highlighting the TPLF atrocities actually in the first slide, I wanted to emphasize where we were, as Alec had mentioned. Back in June, there was probably 3 decades of one-sided information flow to Capitol Hill. And it really, any office that we went into, all they had ever heard was the other side of the story. So it's been an amazing last 5 months in seeing the development and the interest in Ethiopia and Ethiopian issues, and certainly a recognition of what has been happening on the ground has completely shifted. The offices uniformly have been welcoming us. They welcome our information. We are in regular contact, even when we don't have meetings. We are regularly sending information, news, and other important tweets and press releases up to the Hill to all of the relevant committees. I do want to pause for 1 second and say, working with the AIPAC board and other members of the AIPAC community has been a real highlight of my work. Everybody is extremely passionate. Everybody's extremely informed. They are very eager to convey the story, and it's been a wonderful experience in seeing the development of AIPAC and where they are now, and the recognition that they have on the Hill now. Moving on to the Archbishop's visit, that was something Alex also had mentioned. We had 15 meetings with the Archbishops over a 2-day period. They generously gave of their time, flying in from all around the country. These meetings both were on the Hill, but also with administrative officials, where they could directly explain their concerns and their concerns about the messages at that point coming from the Hill and coming from the administration. They were an incredibly powerful voice for the Ethiopian diaspora. Their moral authority gave them a position that nobody else really has. And to see them, the respect with which they were received and the attention and care that they were listened to, it was a very powerful 2 days for AIPAC. The next slide, I wanted to talk a little bit about HRES 445. This was something that had been introduced before AIPAC started working on the Hill. It was introduced back in May. We started working on the Hill in June. And the language actually, as many of you know, has been moved out of the House Foreign Affairs Committee and should be at the floor shortly. Now, I did want to highlight this as an achievement, and the reason why I'm highlighting this as an achievement is if you look at the language from where it was introduced to where we ended up, there was substantial changes of tone, additions of almost every single one of our recommendations, and that there was certainly a complete recognition of the TPLF, what they were doing, their atrocities they were committing, the fact that they were stealing food, the fact that they were invading Amara and Afar. All of those were listed in the resolution. Now, was the resolution what we would have written? No, absolutely not. But I do feel that our advocacy in June, presenting a different side to the committee and the committee staff, there was a recognition that there was information that was not being reflected in the resolution. Because we were able to get the resolution delayed, it was supposed to be considered in June. We had time to mobilize over the course of the next 4 months. We were able to mobilize and provide additional information which shaped the narrative and shaped changes to HRS 445. We know that for a fact. We were told that by congressional staff. So where we ended up was a very different place from where we started. The last issue I want to highlight is AGOA. Regretfully, we do think that the delisting will still occur. But again, I feel that there has been certainly changes in the narrative and a recognition of what the TPLF has been doing, which hopefully will give us these next 60 days where we can again shape the narrative. Like we saw with Chairwoman Bass, she issued a statement after HRS 445 went out, highlighting the fact that, for example, child soldiers, that was the one key issue that we were advocating for, which was not included in the resolution. She came forward and she mentioned that she wished that it had been in the resolution. With AGOA, I think having that statement from the administration 48 hours ago, that was a major change of tone. Do I think that they're still going to delist? Regretfully, I do. But I think that that change of tone allows us an opportunity. There's a wedge there that we can work with, and we are planning on a substantial outreach over the next 60 days to influence and hopefully shape further the U.S. government and the U.S. government's response to Ethiopia. We have one last thing I wanted to mention. We have been in regular contact with the Trade Policy Committee staff that's making the decision in the administration. We have sent them voluminous emails with information, articles, tweets, making sure that they knew what the information, the impact of the AGOA delisting would have, not just on businesses, but the human suffering, what will happen to the women and the children in Ethiopia. That is something we are absolutely going to be highlighting and making sure that members of Congress and the administration recognize the tragedy that's going to be unfolding. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Senator Vitter. Again, thank you very much for the opportunity to represent you.
Thank you, Deidre. I hope this report gives you a sense of why we're so excited about our work with you on these important issues. And I'm certainly excited and honored to be part of the team you've met today, and there are other team members, but we wanted to highlight some of the leaders of our APAC team. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I know you have other aspects of your meeting to get through. However, if there are any questions from the floor, we'd be happy to take them now before you move to other items on your agenda.
Yes. Kalana, if we have questions, we have time for a couple of questions at this point. If we have received any questions.
Yes, this is Guillaume Fissa. I'm a board member, secretary of APAC. Thank you. I'd like to thank the Mercury team. It's been a pleasure working with you guys, and you've learned a lot. You know our issues now, and pretty soon you'll be speaking Amharic too. So the way you're going. So, there's a few questions that came up. One of the questions that came a few times is it says, I am really keen to see how those of us in Europe, especially in the UK where I live, can be of use. What is the plan to make the movement global, if any? That's the first question.
Yeah, that's a great question. To some extent, that's a question for the chairman and the APAC leadership in terms of really expanding this organization and having similar organizations elsewhere. But certainly our work, particularly on the media and digital side, already is global. because a lot of the media coverage really is global. Many of the outlets that Alex mentioned where we have already had a major impact are located outside of the US. Alex, maybe you can just highlight that a bit.
Yeah, of course. I think the really important thing for us is international media also needs content. It also needs engagement. It also needs voices. And international media also plays back to the US, plays back to decision makers, particularly those authoritative ones, such as the Financial Times, which we're able to get the letter to the editor from the chairman. But actually, we've been doing some specific work with former Ambassador Adebabay in the UK. He's reached out to a number of MPs in the UK to try and educate them on the current context of the conflict. We're also doing some outreach with him to the UK media, such as Telegraph, Times, BBC, etc. So we are very much focused. And also just a final point, the chairman did manage to get two op-eds placed in Europe. One for the EU Observer, which was critical of the European Union's decision not to send observers to the election earlier this year. And secondly, with Euronews, which is the biggest pan-European media outlet focused on the progress Ethiopia is making on the fight against climate change, which was a very, very well-read article and very well shared on social media as well. So it is definitely part of our focus when it comes to media, and will continue to be, and we'll look to expand as we go forward as well.
Okay, thank you.
And then my only final suggestion is for the person who asked the question to consider the practicalities of coalescing around other Ethiopians in the UK and forming a similar organization and talking to the chairman and the board about their experience with AIPAC and how you might go about that. I'm sorry, Ian, what's the next question?
Okay, next question. It says, in light of Deirdre's presentation, what can AIPAC do about AGOA, the listing, and it also says, how can you organize diaspora to help with this? Also make a breakthrough in the place. The question really is, what can we do now?
Right.
What else can we do?
Right. Well, as Deidre said, and unfortunately I agree, we are expecting a bad decision on AGOA. It hasn't been announced. We obviously hope we're pleasantly surprised and that doesn't happen, but we're expecting that. However, we're not stopping our work if that happens. In fact, our work will only ramp up. Under the law, the administration needs to notify Congress and thereby the world, including the Ethiopian government, 60 days before the actual delisting occurs. And so if that happens, we'll have at least 60 days to try to engage and essentially change the decision. And normally what the US administration would do is reach out to the country involved and explain in fairly concrete terms what changes they would want to see in order to keep the country in AGOA. So if a negative decision, the delisting is announced, we would immediately go to that mode and push the administration and push members of Congress to demand that the US administration is very specific with the Ethiopian government about how to fix this, how to cure this, so that we can get back into AGOA as soon as possible. I don't know if any other Mercury team members want to add to that.
Yes, Senator, I did want to just add a couple things. One, the last several months, because of the activity in the House Foreign Affairs Committee, we've been really focused on the traditional foreign policy power center of the House and Senate Foreign Affairs and Foreign Relations Committees. One of the things that we were planning on doing anyway was to start introducing AIPAC in a more robust and substantive way to the other power centers. This AGOA decision, actually, technically, there are other committees involved overlooking the USTR with oversight or providing the annual funding process. So if the decision occurs, we actually have a very robust 60-day plan where we will be bringing in other power centers, not just the House and Senate Foreign Affairs and Foreign Relations Committees, to make sure that they were aware and actually get them activated to tell the administration they need to handle things differently. They need to address the AGOA situation in a very different way. So we have a plan. Actually, we'll be speaking with the chairman and the rest of the board tomorrow about it. Hopefully we'll never have to use it, but regretfully, I do think we will.
Okay, thank you. And the third question, or going to be the final question, would be, can any one of you please explain the impact of petitions on U.S. policy towards Ethiopia? And what can we do, the diaspora community, to change the narrative in Congress and in the Senate, the U.S. government?
Right. Well, Yum, as you know, the membership of AIPAC is already doing that effectively, engaging in a clear, positive, informed way with your U.S. senators and your members of Congress can absolutely have a major impact. And we consider that the single biggest and most important tool in our toolbox. We are really empowered by that. If we just depended on our own personal influence, would be rather limited, but your political significance in so many states and so many congressional districts adds to that and really empowers us. And so we're using the diaspora and specifically AIPAC members every step of the way. I think the questioner specifically asked about petitions. I'm not sure traditional petitions per se with just a list of signatures is super effective, but communications, emails with the right message, letters, particularly from folks in a senator's state or in a congressman's district. In other words, people who can actually vote for or against that member of Congress. That is noticed. That is effective, particularly in significant numbers. And we've been trying to organize that in many ways in terms of our GR work, also in terms of the Phone to Action campaign, which plugs many, many thousands of phone calls into those congressional offices and now also administration offices. I don't know if anyone else on our Mercury team wants to add to that.
This is Toby. Yeah, I just want to say, you very often when you're out there trying to influence your elected representatives, you feel like you're banging your head against the wall a bit, but we're seeing the effect of it. We can really see it. They adjourn for the weekend, they go home, they hear from you, they come back, they're a bit different, and their staffs get the message. So we just urge you to keep that up.
Great. Well, Mr. Chairman, again, I know you have other aspects of your agenda, but we're honored to be working for you and the board and AIPAC, and we're already developed our next 60-day plan, which I know we'll be talking about tomorrow morning. So we're honored to continue this important work. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator Vita. Thanks, Congressman Moffat. Thanks, Deirdre and Alex. While we are on the accomplishment discussion, I'm going to invite at this point Elias to just give us a quick update on the activities that has been taking place in Virginia regarding the gubernatorial election. Elias, please. You're on mute. Elias, you are still on mute. Yeah. The take team, Kalala, can you please unmute him?
Thank you. Yep, I finally got it. Chairman Winston, do you want me to continue in English or do you want me to switch to America?
Whatever you feel like.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
I'll do it in English so that since there are a few folks who doesn't speak American, I'll summarize it in Amharic later on. thank you for this opportunity, and it has been a great opportunity to work with you, Mr. Chairman Aswan, and all the folks from Mercury. I'm really thankful for all of your effort and the way we are so far progressing. That said, just to give you a summary of what is happening in Virginia, we went through the different databases that currently Mercury has, and a couple of other locations where Ethiopian advocates, where we were able to identify advocates for Ethiopia. And basically, once we identified that and once we built that database, we went out collecting volunteers. We had a whole lot of people who are interested in helping, both from Virginia and outside Virginia. And so far, we have about 10 or 11 volunteers who are willing to make a phone call, phone banking literally. And we also developed flyers as well as text messages that needed to be sent to all of the Ethiopian diaspora who lives in Virginia and will be voting. So basically, the call script went as to asking folks if they are registered voters and also how they are going to vote. And then based on their response, we went into educating them about protest vote. So some were already ready to do a protest vote, but some were not. So we were able to help them understand what protest vote means, and also not for them not to stay at home, because if you stay at home, really there's nothing you will accomplish beyond, you're silent. So both parties will discount you. So that discussion happened was I made about 60 calls, and other folks did over 200. Some people reached out over 200 people, but the ones that we were not able to get to via phone, we made sure that we sent text message, and most were replying to the text message, and very few people were replying was rather I'm not going to vote, or since Trump is supporting Glenn, we're not going to go for Glenn. But based on that discussion, we went into text message discussion as well as phone calls. And we were able to convince a lot of people to do a protest vote and to make sure that they understand that as an Ethiopian diaspora, we are really disgusted by the approach of the Joe Biden administration, the misguided policy, that we are dismayed, and we need to voice that. Necessarily, we are not voting for Glenn or Terry at this time. We're just casting a protest vote to make sure that our voice is heard, that the poor and the ones that nobody has to speak up for have advocates. So I will give this example. I think I give this example elsewhere too, but I think it's very important that everyone hears the message. One of the gentlemen that we called practically said that he's not going to vote at all, since he is disappointed by the Democrats, though he likes Terry. He doesn't want to vote for Terry, but beyond that, he doesn't want to vote for Glenn as well, because Glenn is supported by Trump. So this argument went for one of the volunteers engaged him for a good 15 minutes. And so the last comment she gave him, and I think everybody should take this to heart, the last comment she gave him was, remember the blood that was shed in Afar. Remember the blood that was shed in Wollo. Remember the blood that was shed in Gondar. Remember the blood that was shed in Tigray. With all this knowledge, if you're okay to sleep and to stay at home and now go out there and protest and show your voice, then don't go. But all those voiceless people, all those poor people, all those Christians, Muslims, those Ethiopians that, the community that we came from, if you are not going to advocate for those folks, do not go. Stay home if you are okay with it. I think this resonated with him pretty well, and I used it as well several times, and he decided to go out and vote. So overall, we to date this morning, when I verified, we are about 2,850 people that we either reached out via phone or via text message, and I think the number went up to 3,100 or so by the afternoon, but the majority expressed the same opinion. The lesson learned from this particular aspect is that, as I said, Ethiopians as a whole are disgusted, dismayed, and rather heartbroken by the amount of effort they put to get Joe Biden elected, but yet the Joe Biden administration took a stance that really, made the existence of Ethiopia into question. So as such, Ethiopians are going to vote, protest vote, Democrats, and send them home as much as possible. But beyond that, the lesson learned here is, before we go into the other states and other elections, there is a lot of legwork that need to be done. We need to understand what a protest vote is and what we are saying by casting a protest vote. I think this was the biggest lesson learned that we need to take to Georgia and everywhere else. So those were the highlights of the Virginian election. We are still continuing, and we are still identifying some people whom we need to engage. My text message, my phone has been blasting. I've been getting a lot of response, mostly positive. And we also identified some TPLF sympathizers who sent us a very questionable text message. So that's pretty much the highlight of the Virginian election. Hopefully we'll get Glenn elected, and we'll make our point across. So that will be it.
Thank you, Elias. While we're on Virginia, I would like to acknowledge the incredibly amazing work done by our own Gannet Nuguse, who pulled in a group of volunteers, and then in 3 weeks had an Ethiopia Day last Sunday in one that was incredibly successful. So Virginia is on fire. Keep up, guys, what you are doing, and thank you for all the hard work. With that, I am going to pass it to Hood for the next part of the presentation.
Thank you, Masvin. The next speaker will be Mr. Yom Fesaha, Secretary of APAC, with regard to financial report of APAC. I'll pass it over to you, Yom.
Thank you. Thank you.
My brain was Yom ነው እንግዲህ የሚቀጥለው የሚያቀርብልን ፋይናንሻል ሪፖርት ያቀርብልናል።
Thank you. I'm going to share my desk. Would you allow? I can do that.
I can do that for you.
I have it here. I have.
Okay.
1 second, please. Okay. Do you see my desk?
Yes.
Okay. So this will be a financial report of the American Ethiopian Public Affairs Committee, American Ethiopia, the Public Affairs Committee ነው የሚባለው በአማርኛ። መጀመሪያ ለመናገር የምፈልገው ስለ ገንዘብ አሰባሰብ እና እንዴት እንደተሰበሰበ ገንዘቡ የት ባንክ አካውንት እንደገባ ለማስረዳት ፈልጋለሁ። ለምን ይሄ በጣም አስፈላጊ ነው፣ በተለይ ለገንዘብ ለረዱ ለደጋፊዎቻችን አስፈላጊ ነው ብዬ ስለማምን ነው። ድርጅታችን ገንዘብ ስብስብ የሚያደርገው በሁለት የባንክ አካውንት ውስጥ ነው። አንደኛው ኤፓክ ነው። ኤፓክ issued per FEC system ማለት Federal Election Committee የሚባል በዛ ህግ ስር የተቋቋመ ስለሆነ ያንን ህግ አክብሮ መስራት ያለበት ነው። ሁለተኛ ዌፍ ደግሞ አጋር ድርጅት የሆነ ወርልድዋይድ ኢትዮጵያን አክሽን ፈንድ ማለት ደግሞ ነን ፕሮፊት ኦርጋናይዜሽን የሆነ ምክንያቱን አስረዳለሁ ለምን በሁለት መንገድ እንደተሰበሰበ ገንዘብ በተቀጠረው የህግ አማካሪ ቢሮ አማካይነት ብቻ ነው የሚከፈለው። ማለትም አሰባሰቡም አከፋፈሉም በህጉን አክብሮ መሆን አለበት። ሁለተኛ ገንዘብ ከግለሰቦች ብቻ ግልጽ በሆነ ሁኔታ ይሰበሰባል። አወጣጡ ለተያዘለት ዓላማ ማስፈጸሚያ ብቻ። አሁን ድረስ የተሰበሰቡ ገንዘብ በሙሉ ለዓላማው ውጪ ምንም አልወጣም እና ዓላማውም ደግሞ በዝርዝርን ለምን እንደወጣ እናሳያለን። በየጊዜው ደግሞ በኦዲተሮች ይመረመራል፣ ለለጋሾች በየወቅቱ ይገለጻል። አሁን እንደምናደርገው ማለት አሁን ዛሬ የሚቀርበው ገንዘብና ወጪና ገቢ በኢንተርናል ኦዲት ተደርጓል እና ኤክስተርናል ኦዲት መጥቶ ያደርጋል። ሁለት ባንክ አካውንት ነው ያለው። ኤፓክ organized under the Federal Election Commission rules regulations. ኤፓክ ውስጥ ገንዘብ መስጠት የሚችሉ ሰዎች ፐርማነንት ሬዚደንት ወይም ሲቲዝን መሆን አለባቸው። ከዛ ውጭ መስጠት አይችሉም ኤፓክ ውስጥ። ሶስተኛ እስከ 5,000 ብር በአመት መስጠት ይችላሉ እና ይሄን አይነት ሪስትሪክሽን ስላለ ሌላ አካውንት ለምን መክፈት አስፈለገ ለሚለው ጥያቄ ዊፍ የተቋቋመበት አንዱ ምክንያት እሱ ነው። አጋር ድርጅት ነው። የራሱ ኦዲተር አለው፣ የራሱ ባንክ አካውንት አለው፣ የራሱ ገንዘብ ያዥ አለው። ማለትም የኤፓክ ገንዘብ ያዥ አቶ ጥላሁን ደገፉ፣ የዊፍ ደግሞ ገንዘብ ያዥ አቶ ልሳኖ ሀብተው ናቸው። ነን ፕሮፊት ኦርጋናይዜሽን ነው ዊፍ። ማንኛውም ዩኤስ ሲቲዝን ያልሆነ ነን ሲቲዝን ገንዘብ መስጠት ይችላል። አንድ ሰው ከ5,000 ብር በላይ አሁን ለምሳሌ ዛሬ ይህንን ስብሰባ አይቶ ኤፓክ ያደረገውን ትልቅ አስተዋጽኦ አይቶ አንድ ሰው መጥቶ 10,000 ብር ቢለግስ ምሳሌ ቢሰጥ 5,000 ኤፓክ አካውንት ሲገባ 5,000 ደግሞ የቀረው ወደ ዊፍ አካውንት ይገባል። ከ5,000 ብር በላይ ስለማይፈቀድ እደግመዋለሁ። አንድ ሰው አሁን ይሄን ሁሉ የተሰራውን ስራ አይቶ በ5 ወር ውስጥ የ5 ዓመት ስራ የተሰራውን አይቶ ይሄ ድርጅት ለኢትዮጵያ የቆመ ለኢትዮጵያ የሚሟገት ድርጅት ነውና ለዚህ ድርጅት ጨምሬ እሰጣለሁ ካለ ይሄንን እኛ ከሬጅ የምናደርገው ነገር ነው። ግን ከ5,000 በላይ ኤፓክ አካውንት ውስጥ ይገባል። ስለዚህ ዊፍ አካውንት ግን ምንም ሊሚት የለውም። በድርጅት ወርተው ተሰባስበው ከሌላም ሀገር አሁን በካናዳ ያሉት እህቶቻችን ወንድሞቻችን አለ ይዘን ታደርጉ 30,000 40,000 50,000 ቢሰጥ አካውንት ማስቀመጥ ሰላም። ሌላው አንድ መናገር የምፈልገው የኤፓክ ገንዘብ አወጣጥ ኤፓክ ገንዘብ መስጠት በሚፈልግበት ጊዜ ጠበቆቹ ናቸው የሚሰጡት እና እኛ ቸክ አንችል። ኤፓክ ቦርድ ማድረግ የሚችለው ለዚህ ኮንግረስማን ለዚህ ሴናተር እንሰጣለን፣ ይሄ ኢትዮጵያን የሚደግፍ ሰው ነው ተብሎ የዛን ጊዜ ስንነግራቸው ጠበቆቹ ለእነሱ ቼክ ይጽፋሉ 5,000 ብር። በዚህ መልክ ነው ገንዘብ የሚወጣው። ገንዘቡ በደንብ ኦዲትድ የሆነ ነው። አሁንም የተሰራ ኦዲት የሚያሳየው የገባው የወጣው ገንዘብ በትክክል መሆኑን ነው የሚያሳየው። ስለዚህ ይህን አንድ ሰመሪ ያሳይና የኤፓክ ኢንተርቪው አቶ ጥላሁን ደገፉ ዝርዝሩን ሊያስረዱን ይችላሉ። ኤፓክ ውስጥ የገባው ገንዘብ ባለፉት 5 ወራት በዲፖዚት 365,148 በዌፍ አካውንት ውስጥ የገባው 59,504 ከ13 ሳንቲም የገባው በአጠቃላይ 424,652 ከ55 ሳንቲም አካውንት ውስጥ ገብቷል። ወጪው ኤክስፔንስ የኤፓክ 173,974 ከ14 ሳንቲም፣ የዊፍ ኤክስፔንስ 14,686 ከ06 ነው። በአጠቃላይ ኮምባይንድ ኤክስፔንስ ውስጥ አሁን ድረስ 188,660 ከ20 ሳንቲም። ባላንስ አሁን ስንት አለ አካውንት ውስጥ? አካውንት ውስጥ 191,174 ከ28፣ ዊፍ አካውንት ውስጥ 44,818 ከ07፣ ባላንሱ 235 የሁለቱም አካውንት ውስጥ አሁን ባንክ አካውንት ውስጥ ስቴትመንቱ ላይ የሚያሳየው ከሁለቱም አካውንት 235992 ከ35 ሳንቲም ነው። የሚከተለውን ስላይድ አቀርባለሁ። አቶ ጥላሁን ደገፉ የዚህን የኤፓክን ገቢና ወጪ ከ5 ወር ያለውን ሊያስረዱን ይችላሉ። አቶ ጥላሁን
አይሰማኝም። አመሰግናለሁ። ይኸውም ለማታውቁኝ ጥላሁን ደገፉ ነኝ። የኤፓክ ትሬጀረር ሆኜ ነው የምሰራው። ይሄንን ከመጀመሪያ በፊት መጀመሪያ ሪሊ ማመስገን የምፈልገው ባለፈው በቨርጂኒያ ኢቨንት ላይ እንዲሁ በዙም ተገናኝተን ፊት ለፊት አግኝተን ሰላም የተባባልናቸው ግለሰቦች በጣም ጥሩ ስራ እየሰሩ ስለሆነ እነሱንም አመሰግናለሁ። ሌላ መስፍን አብይ እንዲሁም የኤፓክ ግሩፕ እያንዳንዱ የኤፓክ ግሩፕ ሌት ተቀን የሚሰራውን ስራ ለኢትዮጵያ ብሎ ይህ ትልቅ ምስጋና አቀርባለሁ። ይሄንን ስናደርግ እና ሌላ ወደ ዝርዝር ስንገባ እንግዲህ ስክሪኑ ላይ ለብዙ ይታያል። ኦርጋናይዜሽኑ የጀመርነው ማርች ላይ ነው። እንደምታዩት ገቢያችን 1000 ብር ነበረ ለማርች። ምንም ወጪ አልነበረንም በዛን ጊዜ። ከዛ ኤፕሪል ኢሚዲየትሊ 42391 ከ42 ሳንቲም ነው ገቢ የሆነው። ምንም ወጪ አላወጣንም በዛም ወር። እንደገና ሜይ 10968 52 ሳንቲም ገብቶ ወጪያችን 5660 ከ80 ሳንቲም ነው የሚለው እንደሚታያችሁ። ጁን እንደምታዩት 41048 ከ70 ሳንቲም ነው ገቢው። ወጪው 2753 ከ83 ነው። ጁን 41000 ጁን ነው አሁን ያነበብኩት። ጁላይ እንደምታዩት 100 ይቅርታ ጁላይ 192476 ከ38 ሳንቲም ነው። ወጪው 6586 ከ10 ሳንቲም ነው እንደምታዩት ነው። ኦገስት ዲፖዚት የተደረገ ወይም ገቢያችን 46141 ብር ከ70 ሳንቲም ነው። ወጪያችን 107834 ከ45 ሳንቲም። ሴፕቴምበር 31171 ብር ከ70 ሳንቲም። ወጪያችን 51190 ብር ከ90 ሳንቲም እና ያው እንደምታዩት ዲፖዚታችን 365148 ከ42 ከማርች እስከ ሴፕቴምበር ድረስ ያለው ነው። እና ወጪያችን ደግሞ ያው ሪፒት ነው። አሁንም ዮም ገልጾታል። ወጪያችን 173974 ከ14 ሳንቲም። አሁን ያለን ባላንስ በኤፓክ ወርልድ ዋይድ ወይም ከዌፍ ውጪ 191174 ከ78 ሳንቲም አለን ባላንሳችን ማለት ነው። አሁን ባንክ ያለ ባላንስ።
እሺ፣ እናመሰግናለን አቶ ጥላሁን። የሚቀጥለው ደግሞ የዌፍ ነው። ይሄንን በደንብ ዶክመንቶችንም ሂሳቡን በደንብ ተከታትለው የሰሩልን አቶ ልሳኑ ሀብተወልድን ለማመስገን ፈልጋለሁ። አቶ ልሳኑ፣ አቶ ጥላሁን በእውነቱ ቅድም አቶ ጥላሁን እንዳሉትም አጠቃላይ ከሊቀመንበሩ ጀምሮ የቦርድ አባላትን አብሮን የሚሰሩትን ሰዎች ሁሉ ለማመስገን ፈልጋለሁ። ብዙ ሰዓት የቤተሰብ ጊዜያቸውን የራሳቸውን ጉዳይ ሳክሪፋይስ እያደረጉ የሰሩትን ባልደረቦቻችንን አብሮን የሚሰሩ ፓርትነርስ ሁሉ እናመሰግናለን። ለምን ይሄ ሁሉ ስራ መሰራት አይችልም ነበር። ሁሉ ሰዎች በጣም ብዙ ችሎታ ያላቸው፣ የአስተዳደር ችሎታ ያላቸው፣ የኦዲት ችሎታ ያላቸው፣ የፋይናንሻል የጽሁፍ ችሎታ ያላቸው በጣም በተለያየ ችሎታ ያላቸው ሰዎች ጋር ነው የምንሰራው ያለ ነው እና ይሄ በጣም ሊመሰገን ይገባል። የዌብ ፋይናንሻል ሰመሪ ያው ቅድም እንዳነሳሁት በአጠቃላይ የገባው ገንዘብ 59504 የወጣው 14686 በአሁን ባንክ ውስጥ ያለው ገንዘብ 44818 ከ07 ሳንቲም እና ለምን ወጣ ለሚባለው የፓክ ኤክስፔንስ በአጠቃላዩ 573974 ከ14 ነው። የዌብ ደግሞ 14686 ከ08 ነው። ለምን ወጣ ሲባል ዋናው ወጫችን ያው ለመርኩሪ ፐብሊክ አፌርስ የተከፈለ 50 ሺህ ብር በየወሩ 150 ሺህ ተከፍሏል። ከዛ የቀረው ትንሽ ነው፣ ብዙ አይደለም። ለሎው ፈርም ተከፍሏል፣ ለባንክ ሰርቪስ ሺህ ተከፍሏል፣ ለዌብሳይት ሜንቴናንስ ተከፍሏል፣ ማርኬቲንግ ፒአር እና ለቪዲዮ ዴቨሎፕመንት ተከፍሏል። እና ትልቁ ይሄ ነው እና እንዳልኩት አብዛኛው ስራ በቮለንቲር ነው እና ለዚህ ነው ወጪው። ሌላው ወጪ በጣም ያነሰበት ምክንያት ለዚህ ነው እና ይሄ ነው እንግዲህ ሰው ሀገሩን በጣም ሀገር ወዳድ በመሆኑ ብዙ ጊዜውን ያሳለፈ ነው በኢምፓክት ስራ ላይ እና አሁን በእውነቱ ለመናገር የምፈልገው ጨርሻለሁ። ግን ይህንን ስራ በሀገር ወዳድነት የሚሰራውን ስራ ለኢትዮጵያ ተሟጋችነት የሚሰራ ለመደገፍ የሚፈልጉ ሰዎች አሁንም እርዳታችሁን መለገስ ትችላላችሁ። ኢምፓክት.org ላይ ገብታችሁ የፋይናንሻል ሰፖርታችሁን እንዳይቋረጥ በትህትና ጠይቃለሁ። ሌላውም ደግሞ ብዙ ኢንፎርሜሽን አለ በእውነት ስለ ኢትዮጵያ እና ስለ አካባቢያ ሚዛናዊ ዜና ከፈለጋችሁ ኢምፓክት ዌብሳይት ላይ ገብታችሁ ሪሶርስ የሚለውን በመጫን ብዙ ኢንፎርሜሽን አለ፣ አፕዴት አለ፣ ኢምፓክት የሚያመጣው ኒውስሌተር አለ። እሱን ሁሉ እንድታዩ በየጊዜው ጋብዛለሁ። አመሰግናለሁ። ጨርሻለሁ።
እናመሰግናለን። ዝውውት ወደ አንቺ ተመልሰናል።
እሺ፣ በጣም ነው የማመሰግነው። በጣም የሚገርም ገለጻ ነው የተደረገልን። ብዙ ነገር እንግዲህ ተረድተናል። በጥቂት ገንዘብ ምን ያህል ስራ እንደተሰራ አይተናል። ይሁም እንዳለው በተቻለን መጠን እንግዲህ ሁላችንም እንረባረባለን። ዛሬም ራሱ ፕሌጅ ማድረግ የምትፈልጉ መስጠትም የምትፈልጉ ሰዎች እንግዲህ ኢንፎርሜሽኑ ቻት ላይ ይቀመጣል ብዬ አስባለሁ። በዛ መሰረት ፕሌጅም ማድረግ መክፈልም ይቻላል። ወደሚቀጥለው ፕሮግራም አልፋለሁኝ። አሁን ማስተዋወቃት እንግዳዬ ሔርሜላ አረጋዊ ትባላለች። በጣም ታላቅ ክብርና ደስታ ይሰማኛል እሷን ሳስተዋውቅ። አሜሪካዊት ጋዜጠኛ ናት። በብዙ ነገር በ2012 ፕሬዚደንሻል ኤሌክሽን ላይ አዋርድ ዊኒንግ ከቨሬጅ የነበራት ናት። በአልጀዚራ እና በተለያዩ ሚዲያ አውትሌቶችም ላይ እንደዚሁ ስትሰራ ቆይታለች። ያው ብዙዎቻችሁ እንደምታውቁት ሔርሜላ በትግራይ ያለውን የሰብአዊ እርዳታ አሰጣጥ ጋር በተያያዘ የህወሓትን ውሸትና ፕሮፓጋንዳ በድፍረት በማጋለጥ ላይ ትገኛለች። if I could use one word to describe ሔርሜላ that would be fearless። በጣም ነው አፕሪሺየት የምናደርግሽ ሁላችንም ሔርሜላ። በዚህ አጋጣሚ የህወሓትን ፕሮፓጋንዳ በማጋለጥ እና በአፋርና በአማራ ክልል ለተጎዱ በሚሊዮን ለሚቆጠሩ ህዝቦች ድምጽ በመሆን ለምታደርጊው ድንቅ ስራ በሁላችንም ስም ምስጋናዬን አቀርባለሁ። ማይኩን ወደ አንቺ አስተላልፋለሁ ሔርሜላ።
Thank you so much for the generous introduction to VA. So yes, my name is ሔርሜላ Aragawi. I'll give a little bit background on my profession and then a little bit personal because I think it's relevant. So I'm a journalist. I've been working in the industry for about 10 years. Like Tooth mentioned, I've worked for Al Jazeera America, CBS Los Angeles, former Al Gore's Current TV, working on the 2012 presidential elections. So that's on the professional end. On the personal end, both of my parents are from the Tigray region. I was born in Addis Ababa. I came to the United States when I was 7 years old. We came because my mother had a scholarship to get a PhD in medicinal chemistry at the University of Mississippi. One thing I'll say growing up is we never had conversations about ethnicity. I just knew there was, Amharic music, Tigrinya music, music from Walaita or Oromia, but none of that even necessarily connected to ethnicity to me, at least not when I was growing up. And beyond even just Ethiopia, Oxford, Mississippi, particularly University of Mississippi, is a very international school. So I went to school with and lived with people from all over the world. So diversity is very normal to me. And so with that said, even with that background, when the war started, I also, in some ways, I'll say, fell victim to a lot of the really strong propaganda. At the beginning of the war, my mother was in Mekelle working with the university there. She had moved there about a year prior. There was, as most people know, a telecommunication blackout. I was worried. I was working with Tigrayan activists who I believe were interested in the humanitarian element of it. I was looking to places like CNN and New York Times, AP, etc., to get my information about what was happening, and I was worried. So I would talk to some of the activists, or they would talk to me, and there would be this conversation, not just with me, but a lot of Tigrayan Ethiopians saying, what, like, we didn't know that we were hated just because of our ethnicity. Most of our friends are from all over the place. Me personally, someone I was friends with for probably over 15 years, I didn't know actually what ethnicity she was. It didn't occur to me. I just thought we were both Ethiopian, and that conversation didn't happen until the last few years, when ethnicity, to at least the diaspora, became really politicized. So when I spoke with activists, they would say, no, you don't understand, because we didn't live there. They really hate us. And that really became the messaging for hashtag Tigray genocide. That hashtag was launched at the very beginning of the war. That, from a journalistic element, didn't make sense to me because it was just too early. We didn't know anything. All I knew, or what I thought I knew, was it looked like it was a war. The federal government was calling it a rule of law enforcement, which I didn't understand that. There wasn't a lot of communication, or good communication, at least in English. I do understand Amharic, but I didn't at the time really look to Ethiopian media stations for information. So a lot of the information I was getting in hindsight leaned very much propaganda. And I do know that within the activism, they are pretty good about sending photos and videos that come out through communications from people that have satellite access, which is usually people that have connections either to aid agencies or government agencies or TPLF. And so the news became really skewed. I just didn't know it was skewed until some time had passed. So we saw some of the reports of massacres from CNN, for example. That sounded so outside of I did not know this kind of thing could happen in Ethiopia. And yet, over time, because Amnesty put out some reports that were similar, I did start to believe that was happening. I myself, even at some point, used hashtag Tigray genocide. As hesitant as I was for a while, there was times that I had gotten caught up with it and did use it. There was a lot of debates with friends that I've had for a long time. But as time went on, it became clear that these institutions that I relied on for a lot of domestic news, or that were generally considered credible, were telling a very one-sided story. So about, I would say maybe like 5 months into the war, I really just started to question things on a much bigger level. I pulled back from working with some of the activists because even within that, I would hear, as there were efforts while the federal government was still in Mekelle, there were groups that were trying to send things like insulin and baby formula to people there. But because the government was in control at the time, I would hear activists say, no, don't give it through those groups, just give money to this organization or that organization. Those couple of organizations would be ones that were never really showing people where the money was going. I would even ask, or I had asked, and somebody basically just said, none of your business. So I started to get really suspicious of whether it was really a humanitarian issue, because if you really think it's a genocide, there's only, Tigray is a minority region. And so I would think that you would support these efforts that were trying to save people's time in the meantime, as the war was going on. But it looked like the leaders and the activism were not really going in that direction. So after staying silent for a few months and just kind of watching how things went, I, on Ethiopian New Year, thought, or put up a Happy Ethiopian New Year post, and in it had an Ethiopian flag. And so I got a lot of backlash from some Tigrayans in the diaspora saying, how could you use this genocidal flag, et cetera, et cetera. And so I thought, okay, so these people think they own me because I worked with them for some time, but they don't actually know that for the last few months, my mind has been changing. I've been going in a different direction. I would even have people say through friends or to me, hey, why are you being silent? Why are you not saying anything? Why are you not advocating to save your people, etc.? And I just wouldn't say anything. So the Ethiopian New Year post was an opportunity to have a conversation that I had been wanting to have for the few months before that, because when in the end of June, the Ethiopian government declared a unilateral ceasefire and Tigray forces didn't, I was furious because I thought the whole point of the activism was to stop the war. And instead, we saw reports of Tigray forces actually moving, and they would admit that, they were moving into the Amhara regions and the Afar regions, and there was one BBC report, I didn't see it anywhere else, but one BBC report that actually talked about that, and that basically outlined Tigray forces saying they had killed like 4,000 people, Ethiopian military saying they had killed 6,000 people. So if you just take both of their words as fact, that's 10,000 people in that couple of months between the federal government declaring a ceasefire and the Tigray forces moving into other regions. So I thought that was the post after the Ethiopian New Year addressed that. So I said, listen, this is the flag for Ethiopia. I grew up in Ethiopia. This is the only internationally recognized flag. And this doesn't, just because I use it, it doesn't mean I co-sign the suffering of some people. And then while we're at it, for those of you who've been calling for peace at the beginning of this war, you should be saying the same thing when Tigray forces are moving into other regions where a lot of people are dying. So that was, of course, that like garnered even more backlash. I was in some group chats with some of the activists. They're calling me all kinds of names, forgetting that I was in those group chats. And I thought, okay, well, I'm just going to keep asking the questions I've actually been wanting to ask, since this is not really, since people are not being just logical. So the next couple of things I talked about was just asking the questions that I had been wondering. For example, if you say this is a genocide, then why are you curtailing efforts, humanitarian efforts that would actually save people's lives? If it, you know, since there was a count of civilians, they counted, I think it's 70,000 is what they said. Well, what about the number of soldiers that are dying? Because you're saying you're fighting for and everyone's, you know, TPLF and everyone's TDF, but you're only counting civilians that have died. And then, of course, why are you also moving into other regions? And so that just took everything to a whole new level. I became enemy number one for a lot of Tigrayan diaspora, particularly the activists. It's hard to know how pervasive these opinions that are coming from activists are, because they dominate the conversation, particularly on social media. So that's when a lot of harassment started online, a few threats. It escalated to people starting a petition to get me fired from CBS Los Angeles. They would call me pro-Tigray genocide. And it just occurred to me as time went on, wow, this was just completely political for the people at the very top. And so many people have gotten wrapped up in it, thinking it's humanitarian, and they're now speaking only in that echo chamber, and they have just stopped thinking. They've just stopped asking questions. So I just kept going because I just felt like there were a lot of people's lives at stake, and it just allowed me to finally have the full, complete conversation that I wanted to have. So, okay, so I talked about some of the CNN, AP, New York Times. So one of the articles in AP that said that, you know, Tigray is starving because of the Ethiopian government's blockade. I looked into that article, and the picture that they used, the main picture of the starving kid that was said to be at Eider Hospital, which is in Tigray, was provided anonymously. That is not something that we would do especially for such a big story. So if you're talking to people at the hospital and you say this kid is at the hospital, then you get a picture that is sourced from Eider Hospital. It can't be anonymous. So my guess is, and this is because of my experience working with the activists, that picture came from a pro-TPLF activist, and then they built a whole article around that. And so within that article also, there was this constant repeating of the Ethiopian government is blocking aid. But then you would see World Food Program and the UN actually showing trucks of humanitarian aid trucks going in. So a lot of this work is, a lot of this information is, it's right there. It's just a matter of somebody connecting the dots. I'm not making up anything. I don't have necessarily original reporting. It's just, I care enough to know the truth about Ethiopia and what's going on there. And I do have the experience to be able to make those connections. So I started writing about the humanitarian blockade lie. And during that time, UN Ethiopia talked about these 466 trucks that had gone to Tigray. This is September when they're saying this, that had gone to Tigray since mid-July, and the majority of them did not come back. So I started to backtrack and do some research. You would see on Tigray Media House and some of the TPLF connected media stations, truckloads of soldiers. And in some of them, you can see the actual logos of WFP. So you'd see truckloads of soldiers moving into the Amhara region. And there was this accusation from the Ethiopian government that TPLF was using these trucks for logistics. What was like there was a lot of like big moments for me, but one of them is when Tigray leadership did not deny that these trucks went in. They just said it was because of fuel. And so that to me was, okay, so what are we talking about? What I thought we said that I thought you're saying humanitarian aid isn't going in, but you're actually admitting that these nearly 500 trucks had gone in. You're just saying fuel is the reason that it did not, that did not make it back out. So I looked into that whole thing, and basically there's a lot of numbers and it's a little confusing, but I actually reached out to the UN to confirm what they were saying was the necessary amount of fuel that needed to go into Tigray on a weekly basis. They said it was 200,000, but they were leaders. They were using that number based on their goal of getting 100 trucks in a day. So 700 trucks a week, 200,000 liters. Within one BBC article, they said that 300,000 liters of fuel had gone into Tigray. That can support about 1,000 trucks. So why is it that there's not enough fuel for the 400 plus trucks, right? So I wrote an article about that and just really started to do my own work. During that time, harassment's escalating. People are calling my job. I had a couple of conversations with people there, but I wanted to keep going anyway because I thought it was worth it. So I just want to run through some notes here. One point about the whole civilian count and no soldier count. So I know for a fact, so this is a little bit more original reporting. I've talked to someone that said that a young man who said him and 3 other people were sent into a fight with just one weapon, and he was the only one that made it out. So I'm thinking, okay, so you're sending these people in without enough to fight. When most of them die, they are being counted as civilians. And as you'll notice with a lot of pictures that are shared by TPLF activists and officials, a lot of those fighters are not uniformed. So it's really easy to build a narrative that this is genocide, that they're only killing civilians, when a lot of them are not even uniformed and not equipped properly. And this whole thing just really disgusted me, honestly. You know, you're talking about a whole movement that says that they're about humanitarian, and you're actually not only creating the narrative that is fueling the war, but there's a lot of money that's been raised in the diaspora. I mean, there's fundraisers right now, even though they're saying they can't, you know, banking is not working and you can't really get anything in there. There's still a lot of money being raised. It's at least a few $1 million at this point. And it's become an industry almost. Like, you know, this war has become an industry. People are making T-shirts and jewelry and all this stuff. They're saying the profits are going to go to the aid, but it looks like people are just paying themselves to go to protest for whatever end. So at some point, I had to kind of make the decision because I couldn't keep doing the work that I wanted to do in terms of providing clarity on what was going on in Ethiopia, and still do the local news job that I was doing. So I made the decision not too long ago. I'm going to keep going in this direction. I just don't think that there's enough people with my background, professional and personal, that can step into this space and really clarify some information. I went on a leap of faith. I've gotten a lot of support that I really appreciate for that. And during this work, and I'll wrap it up soon because I think my time is coming up, I found that this is not just an Ethiopia story. It's not just an Ethiopia story that humanitarian aid is redirected to war. And to that point, we know that UN officials, 2 UN officials, whistleblowers, have actually blown the whistle and said that is what is happening. 7 UN officials have been kicked out of the country by the Ethiopian government on those accusations. And I found that this sort of gaslighting of a country's story, where Western media, the CNNs, the ones that people, elevate to be these like legitimate sources of information, actually have a record of creating false narratives in other countries as well. I've connected with people from Haiti, from Venezuela, Bolivia, Afghanistan, that almost tell the same formula of a story of how these media outlets are used to create a false narrative in their countries in order to force regime change. And that seems to be what's happening in Ethiopia. They're, supporting this rebel group that used to once be in power, backed by the West. It looks like they want to get back into power. By their own admission, they're going to get to Addis, although they'll give you a different reason for that. And so this strengthened my my resolve to go in the direction of independent media. And social media has really, and this is not something that just I think, but other journalists, in a sense, from Haiti and other places have said, social media has changed the game. You can no longer tell these completely false narratives that hurt millions of people around the world and it not get deconstructed. Venezuela has actually done a really good job resisting this. It's considered a success story because while these outlets were saying one thing, there were journalists on the ground that were in real time refuting those allegations. So that also leads me into just telling everyone, reminding everyone, a lot of the people on this call actually know about it, that on November, tomorrow, we're going to start a campaign on social media. I'll hold off on sharing the hashtag, but it's really just going all in to correct some of these false narratives in hopes of saving a lot of people, in hopes of uniting some people who have been friends for a long time or who are family members that are debating over this issue because the propaganda on the TPLF side is so strong. I mean, I am arguing with family members. I've gotten a story. One man reached out to me, said, I can't remember where he's from, maybe Oromo or Amhara region, but his wife is Tigray. 29 years, they have one child together, and he says they are breaking down because they have bought into the TPLF propaganda narrative, both his daughter and his wife. And he was telling me he was hoping that I could talk to his daughter to help with that. So it's not just, this false narrative is not just killing a lot of Tigrayans, Amharans, Ethiopians as a whole, but it's also breaking up a lot of diaspora friendships and family. And I think that's just double the tragedy of it all. And it's only by trying to create some agreed upon narratives, truthful narratives, that maybe we can undo some of that. And so I'll end with this. It feels like an Ethiopia story right now, but it's really not. This is about how lies can destroy a lot of people's lives, about this is how race and ethnicity and gender and affiliations can really be used to break up people because they do not actually use people's values as a method of determining whether to ally with them or not. As I mentioned in my personal background story, I mean, in Mississippi, people, when they hear that, say, "Oh, I'm so sorry for Mississippi." It really wasn't that bad. Yes, there was some ignorance on some level with people there, but some of our closest friends were Native Mississippians, Native white Mississippians. They were people that supported us when we needed it. And throughout my life, the people that have helped me are of all backgrounds, and the people that have hurt me are of all backgrounds. So there's really no consistency in terms of what makes you good based on your ethnicity or race or gender, for that matter, right? So I think this work is about that. It looks like it's about Ethiopia, but it's much bigger than that. And so that people can ally and become friends and work with each other based on shared values of honesty, compassion, hard work, all of that, instead of, you know, what ethnicity you just happen to be born into or what race or gender you just happen to be born to. So with that said, I might have gone over time. Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, ሔርሜላ. That's such a powerful and inspiring testimony. And now it's very clear that TPLF divisive and pervasive propaganda is really an issue that we have to stay focused on and address. So thank you for that reminder, and keep up the wonderful work you are doing. We're all standing with you. I'm sure some people have some questions, but we will have some time towards the end. Now, just keep it. ጥያቄና መልስ መጨረሻ ላይ ይኖረናል። ለሄርሜላ ያላችሁን ጥያቄ ለጊዜው በቻት እንትን ውስጥ አስቀምጡትና we'll come to it. Thank you. So we'll move to the next speaker. የሚቀጥለው ተናጋሪያችን ነብዩ አስፋው ነው። ነብዩ, I will just turn it over to you. ነብዩ will talk about recognition of the organizations that are working in partnership with AIPAC and activists. Thank you.
Really quickly, can we do a quick reminder ለጥያቄዎች ካላችሁ, please, as stated in the beginning of the program, for those of you who joined us later, Pigeonhole የሚባል ዌብሳይት ዲዛይን አድርገናል ለጥያቄና መልስ. So if you have any questions, please enter it into www.pigeonhole.apac2021, which can be found in the chat box. Once again, it's APAC2021. Passcode. You can enter your questions. WAME is our site line የምታዩትን ጥያቄዎች vote ብታደርጉ, the ones with the highest number of votes will be answered. So
thank you. Okay. ነብዩ.
Thank you. ትሁት ይሰማል አይደለም? Okay. I'm going to switch to Amharic. ወደ አማርኛ ሄዳለሁ. AIPAC የተለያዩ ፓርትነር ኦርጋናይዜሽኖች አሉ። ከኤኢፓክ አንዱ ፓርትነር ከሆነው ኢትዮጵያን አሜሪካን ዴቨሎፕመንት ካውንስል ነኝ። እንደሚታወቀው ኤኢፓክ በአይነቱ ልዩ የሆነ ለዘመናት ስንመኘው የነበረ የዳያስፖራ ህብረት ነው። ታሪካዊ ድርጅት ነው። በአሜሪካ ውስጥ ጠንካራ የሚባሉ ኮሚኒቲዎች እንደ አይሁድ አሜሪካ ኮሚኒቲ፣ እንደ ኩባን አሜሪካን ኮሚኒቲዎች እንደዚህ አይነት ህብረት ሰርተው ተጽዕኖ ሲያደርጉ ቆይተዋል እና for decades ስንመኘው የነበረው ነገር ነው ኤፓክ እና በጣም ደስ የሚል ነው። የ5 ዓመት ስራ በ5 ወር ነው የተሰራው። ሪሊ 5 ወር ብቻ ነው ኤፓክ ያለው እና ይሄ ሁሉ ፖሲብል የሆነው it's because of our partners. ይህ ህልም እውን እንዲሆነው ብዙዎች ለፍተዋል፣ ብዙዎች ደክመዋል፣ እንደ ግለሰብ እንደ ድርጅት እና በዚህ አጋጣሚ አስተዋጽኦ ላደረጉ መስዋዕትነት ለከፈሉ ወንድሞቻችን እህቶቻችን በሙሉ በጣም ከልብ የአክብሮት ምስጋና እናቀርባለን። just to mention የተወሰኑ ያህሉ ተባባሪ ድርጅቶች ግሎባል ኢትዮጵያን አድቮኬሲ ነክሰስ ግሊን ሁላችሁም ታውቁታላችሁ። በጣም ትልቅ አስተዋጽኦ ያደረገ ያለ ድርጅት ነው። ኢትዮ ካናዲያን ኔትወርክ ፎር አድቮኬሲ ኤክና፣ the Ethiopian Public Diplomacy Network EPDN, the Ethiopian American Development Council EADC, the Global Alliance for the Rights of Ethiopians, the Ethiopian Advocacy Network EAN, እንዲሁም ሌሎች ድርጅቶች ስለምታደርጉት ትልቅ ምስጋና ይገባል። ይሄ ስራ የሚሰራው የቮለንቲር ስራ ነው። በሙሉ ቤተሰብ ኃላፊነት ስራ ያለ ሰው ነው የሚሰራው። ይሄን ሁሉ ተትቶ ነው ስለ አገር ተብሎ የተሰራ ያለው እና በዚህ ህብረት ውስጥ ያየነው ምን ያህል አብረን ስንሰራ ምን ያህል ስንተባበር ትልቅ ለውጥ ማምጣት እንደምንችል ነው። ነገር ግን ከዚህ ሁሉ የበለጠ ዛሬ በኤኢፓክ ስም ላመሰግን የምፈልገው እናንተን ነው፣ ህዝቦቻችንን፣ ማህበረሰባችንን። ከሁሉም የበለጠ ለሁሉም ስኬት ምክንያት የሆናችሁት የኢትዮጵያ ዳያስፖራ ኮሚኒቲ ነው። ድር ቢያብር አንበሳ ያስር የሚባለውን አባባል ምንነት አሳይታችሁናል። በትብብራችሁ አንበሳውን አስራችኋል። ባለፉት 10 ወራት መለስ ብለን ስናይ በኢትዮጵያ ላይ የተሰራው ሴራ ከሚዲያ፣ ከኮንግረስ፣ ከዩሮፕ፣ ከካናዳ፣ ከዩናይትድ ስቴትስ በዓለም ሁሉ የዓለም ሀያላን ከዩናይትድ ኔሽንስ ከአምነስቲ ኢንተርናሽናል ሳይቀር ኢትዮጵያ ላይ አጥምደው ነበረ። አንድ ጥያቄ ልጠይቃችሁ። ባትንቀሳቀሱ ኖሮ እናንተ ድምጽ ባታሰሙ ኖሮ ምን ይፈጠር ነበር ኢትዮጵያ ላይ? አንዳንድ ጊዜ የሰራነው ስራ ፍሬ ያፈራ አይመስል ይሆናል። ለውጥ ያልመጣ ሊመስል ይችላል። ግን በጣም ለውጥን ያመጣ ነው። የኮንግረስ ተወካዮችን በመደወል ደብዳቤ በመጻፍ ስልክ በመደወል በየስቴቱ የምታረጉት ስራ ትልቅ ጫና ፈጥሮ ኢትዮጵያ ላይ ይደርስ የነበረውን አደጋ አሳንሶታል። አሁንም ሚኒማይዝ እያደረገው ነው። በተለይም በሶሻል ሚዲያ ከዚህ በፊት ጦርነቱ ሲጀመር በጣም ብዙ ካምፔን ነበር አገንስት ኢትዮጵያ። ያንን ቀልብሳችሁታል። በተለይ በመቶ ሺዎች የሚቆጠሩ ኢትዮጵያውያኖች ወደ ትዊተር ማይግሬሽን ብለዋል። ወደ ትዊተር ግልብጥ ብላችሁ ነው የገባችሁት። በዚህ ላይ ሚዲያዎቹን ቀጥታ በማናገር ኮንግረስማን ወይመኖቹን ቀጥታ በማናገር ያደረጋችሁት ስራ ማዕበሉን ቀልብሷል። እንኳን ደስ ያላችሁና ትልቅ የከበረ ምስጋና በኤኢፓክ ስም ላቀርብ እወዳለሁ። ምክንያቱም ይሄንን ባትሰሩ ኖሮ ይሄን ባታረጉ ኖሮ ይሄኛ የምንሰራውን ስራ ስኬት አይኖረውም ነበር። ከዛ በበለጠ ደግሞ ኢትዮጵያ ላይ ምን ሊደርስ ይችል ነበር? ኢማጂን የኢትዮጵያ እድል እስካሁን ምናልባት እንደ ሊቢያ ሊሆን ይችል ነበር፣ እንደ ሲሪያ ሊሆን ይችል ነበር ጠንካራ ዳያስፖራ ባይኖር። ስለዚህ የምትሰሩት ስራ የምትታገሉት ትግል ትንሽ እንዳይመስላችሁ ትልቅ አስተዋጽኦ ነው ያለው እና አሁንስ ምንድነው ይሄንን እየቀጠልን what is next ምንድነው የምንሰራው ለሚለው አሁን ሜሮን ሞር ትሄድበታለች። ግን በትልቅ ከምስጋናችን ጋር የምናሳስበው ስራው ገና ነው። we are just getting started። ስለዚህ አሁን ደግሞ እንደ ማህበረሰብ ይሄ ለኢትዮጵያን ኮሚኒቲ ለኤርትራን ኮሚኒቲ ነው። what's the next step? The next step is civic engagement። ይህ ማለት ደግሞ በቮቲንግ በካምፔን በኢሌክሽን በ50 ስቴት ውስጥ መንቀሳቀስ ነው። ይሄ አማራጭ የሌለው ማድረግ የምንችለው ኃይል ጉልበት ቁጥሩ ያለን ስራ ነው እና ይሄንን ነው አሁን ልንናገር የምንፈልገው። ቮቲንግ ለዴሞክራት ምረጡ፣ ለሪፐብሊካን ምረጡ፣ ለከሌ ምረጡ አይደለም። ምናልባት ሪፐብሊካን ልትወዱም ልትጠሉም ትችላላችሁ፣ ዴሞክራት ልትወዱም ልትጠሉም ትችላላችሁ። ነገር ግን የአሜሪካ ዜግነት ካላችሁ የቮቲንግ ላይ ፓርቲሲፔት ስታደርጉ ዴታ ውስጥ ይገባል። ማን እንደመረጠ ይታወቃል። ስለዚህ የኮንግረስ እየደወልን እንደዚህ አታርጉ እንደዚህ እያለን ስንናገር በቮቲንግ አክቲቭ ካልሆንን ሪሊ እንደ ጆክ ነው የምንታየው። ስለዚህ ዛሬ የምናቀርበው ጥሪ ከቨርጂኒያ ጀምሮ አሁን ሰሞኑን በጣም ብዙ ስራ የተሰራ ነው። ቨርጂኒያ በየስቴቱ ምርጫ አለ፣ እዚህም ኮሎራዶ ምርጫ አለ። መሳተፍ አለብን፣ መሳተፍ አለባችሁ። ማክሰኞ ወደ 2022 ስንሄድ ፓርቲሲፔት ማድረግ አለብን። ለኢንዲፔንደንት መምረጥ ይችላል፣ ለማንም መምረጥ ይችላል። ስለዚህ አሁን የምንሰራው የኢንጌጅመንት ስራ ለኢትዮጵያ ብላችሁ የምትሰሩት የቮቲንግ እና ሲቪክ ኢንጌጅመንት ከሁሉም የበለጠ መሰረታዊ የሆነ ኃይል ለህብረተሰባችን የሚሰጥ ስለሆነ ኤኢፓክ ይሄንን ሊደግፍ ይሄንን ሊያስተባብር ተዘጋጅቷል። ቅድም መስፍንም እንደተናገረው አሁን ሜሮንም ኤክስፕሌን እንደምታደርገው we are fired up, we are ready to go with a 50-state strategy, but we need you። ስለዚህ የቮቲንግን ለእናንተም ለቤተሰቦቻችሁም የቮቲንግ every election federal, local, city, council, everything የሁሉም በየአመቱ ታክስ እንደምትሰሩት የታክሳችሁን እንደምትሰሩት የቮቲንግም እንደዛ አይነት ኃላፊነት መውሰድ አለባችሁ። ታክስ አታሳልፉም፣ ታክስ ትሰራላችሁ አይደል? ቮቲንግም እንደዛ መሆን አለበት። ኦልሞስት ካልቸር መያዝ አለብን። የቮቲንግ ካልቸር በካልቸራችን ውስጥ መምጣት አለበት እና ይሄንን በእውነት እንድትቀበሉን እንድታስቡበት እና ሲሪየስሊ እንድትወስዱት በታላቅ ትህትና ጥሪ አቀርባለሁ። ስላዳመጣችሁኝ አመሰግናለሁ። አሁን ከዚህ ቀጥሎ ኢፓክ ቅድም መስፍንም እንዳለው አሁን ሜሮን እንደምታስረዳው የ50 ስቴት ስትራቴጂ የተነደፈ እቅድ አለ። አብራችሁ ለመስራት ዝግጁ ነን። ግን በየስቴቱ የሚሰራው ስራ በእናንተ ነው። ስለዚህ ይህንን እንዴት ተባብረን መስራት እንደምንችል ሜሮን ታስረዳለች። አመሰግናለሁ።
እሺ ቴንክ ዩ ሜሮን ቀጥይ።
ኦኬ ቴንክ ዩ ሶ ማች አመሰግናለሁ ሁላችሁም በጣም ነው የምናመሰግነው። ሜሮን አህዱ እባላለሁ ከግሪን ከሚባለው ኦርጋናይዜሽን ጋር ነኝ ያለሁት። we partner with APAC. So ነቢዩ እንዳለው our vote is our power. So we have to be able to use that. And how do we use that? ያንን እንዴት አድርገን ነው በፓወር እንዳለን ልናሳይ የምንችለው? One of the things and the main thing is voting as a block. ይሄ ደጋግመን በተለያየ መንገድ የሚነገር ነገር ነው። So APAC ቅድም መስፍን እንትን እንዳደረገው has come up with a 50-state strategy. ነቢዩ ከቻልክ ኦርጋናይዜሽናል ቻርት ሼር ብታደርግልን። So ይሄ ኦርጋናይዜሽናል ስትራክቸር ምንድነው? ወደ 2022 ወደ ኤሌክሽን በምንሄድበት ጊዜ በምን መልክ ተቀናጅተን ከላይ እስከታች መቅረብ እንችላለን የሚለው ነው። ኮሚኒቲያችንን እንዴት ኦርጋናይዝ ማድረግ እንችላለን? So on the top, on the left hand side, ቅድም ሲነገር የነበረው ነው መስፍንም ኤክስፕሌን አድርጎታል። the National Election Campaign Coordinating Committee, which basically is the group that will be strategy የሚያወጣው አቅጣጫ የሚያስይዘው ነው የሚሆነው። ይሄ group right now formed ሆኗል. It has, I believe, about 13 participants. ከተለያዩ ከኤፓክ ፓርትነርስ ጋር እና ኢንዲቪጁዋልስ ኤክስፔሪየንስ ያላቸው ነው ያላቸው ሰዎች እዚህ ሃይ ሌቨል ኮሚቴ ውስጥ ናቸው አቅጣጫ የሚያስይዝ ማለት ነው። ሶ ይሄ ግሩፕ ኢንትረስቲንግሊ ምንድነው ከተለያዩ ስቴቶች ናቸው ያሉት። የተለያዩ ኮንስቲቱዌንት ያላቸው አካላት ናቸው እዚህ ግሩፕ ውስጥ ያሉት, which is very good. ከዛ ቀጥሎ ያለው የኤሌክሽን ሪሰርች ኮሚቴ ነው። The election research committee, what it does is 50 states who's viable, ማነው ለኤሌክሽን ጥሩ እንትን ያለው ቻንስ ያለው as a candidate. ከዛ በኋላ ደግሞ የቶቹ ስቴቶች ናቸው close running ያላቸው። ለምሳሌ አሁን ቨርጂኒያ is a very good case study. እንደዛ አይነት ቦታዎች አንድ ማፕ በኋላ እናሳያቸዋለን ከዚህ በኋላ that እኛ as Ethiopian Americans difference ልናመጣ የምንችለው የት ጋር ነው ብንሳተፍ የሚለውን ነገር ሪሰርች የሚያደርግ ራሱን የቻለ ኮሚቴ አለ ማለት ነው። እነዚህ ሁለት high level committees where they get their information from, ሁሉን ኢንፎርሜሽኖቻቸውን ዴታቸውን ከየት ነው የሚያመጡት? ከስር ወደ ላይ ነው ማለት ነው። which is the state election campaign committee ይባላል, which will be coordinating በተለያዩ ስቴቶች የሚዋቀሩትን የኤሌክሽን ኮሚቴዎች። ይሄ በየዲስትሪክቱ ይሄ ስቴት ኤሌክሽን ኮሚቴ የሚባለው በየዲስትሪክቱ በየስቴቱ እነማን ፓርትነር አድርገው ከኛ ጋር መስራት ይችላሉ የሚለውን ነገር እንትን ያደርጋል። ከዛ ስር ደግሞ ይሄ አሁን ያልኳችሁ የስቴት ኤሌክሽን ኮሚቴ የሚያስተሳስረው ይሆናል። ከዛ ስር ደግሞ ምንድነው የሚኖረው? በየስቴቱ there will be committees that will be handling በራሳቸው በሎካል as we all know all politics is local. So the local level ነው ማንኛውም እነማን ናቸው የሚሮጡት who is identified እነማን how many Ethiopian American voters are there volunteers እንዴት ነው ሪክሩት የምናደርገው እንደዚህ የሚለውን ነገር በስቴት ሌቭል የሚዋቀሩ ኮሚቴዎች ናቸው ይሄንን የሚሰሩት and then we drill down to the district level በዲስትሪክት ሌቭል በስቴት ውስጥ የሚሰሩት በዲስትሪክት ሌቭል ያሉትን ኮሚቴዎች ሪክሩት ያደርጋሉ ይላሉ ኮሚቴ እንዲዋቀር ያደርጋሉ one of the things that we have to understand ምንድነው that's why data is so very important and research is so very important we do say 50 state strategy and we will try to have committees everywhere okay but as you know resources are limited it's it's impossible right now APAC ሁላችን ባለንበት capacity ሁሉንም ስቴት ታርጌት ማድረግ እንችላለን የሚል ኢሉዥን ሊኖረን አይገባም ሆኖም ግን ፎከስ የሆኑ where can we make a difference just like a ቅድም mention Virginia was a tight race our involvement really mattered so እንደዛ አይነቶችን እየመረጥን ታርጌት እያደረግን ኢንቮልቭ ማድረግ ይኖርብናል ማለት ነው ሶ ሌላው አንድ በጣም ኢምፖርታንት ነገር ምንድነው በየስቴቱ በየሎካሊቲው we have to be independent voters ማለት ምንድነው we cannot non-partisan is the word that I want to use I know right now but I'm busy outrage against the Republican against the Democratic Party against the Biden administration a lot of outrage a lot of anger and we do want to keep in mind that our interests ሁሉ ጊዜ መሆን አለባቸው the forefront መሆን መቻል አለባቸው ማን ነው ኢንትረስታችንን ያስጠብቅልን የሚችለው who is listening to us whether he's a Republican whether he's a Democrat he she it's we want to know we want to engage on the local level and understand who is it that will be listening to our agenda agendaዎች primary agenda of course it's the Ethiopian American coalition or በኢትዮጵያ ላይ ያላቸው አቋም ምንድነው የኢትዮጵያና አሜሪካ ጥሩ የሆነ ግንኙነት እንዲኖራቸው ነው የምንፈልገው የምንገፋው እዛ ነው and then of course on the local level ደግሞ ኢሹዎቻችንን እነማን ናቸው አድሬስ ሊያደርጉ ይችላል እንግዲህ ይሄ ኢንፎርሜሽን በሎካል ሌቨል ይመጣና ወደ ላይ ይወጣል ማለት ነው it will go to the state committee it will go to the research committee which will then pass it on to the national election committee which will give directions አቅጣጫ እንደዚህ የሚያሳይበት ሁኔታ ይኖራል ማለት ነው so ይሄ non-partisan የሚለውን እንትን ትንሽ ደግሜ አንተ ማለት ፈልጋለሁ there's a lot of anger there's a lot of outrage against the Democrats but we have to keep in mind that case by case issue by issue መሆን መቻል አለበት ምንደግፈው so issue based የሆነ ድጋፍ ወይም የድጋፍ መከልከል ነው ሊኖረን የሚገባው and that actually if የምትከታተሉ ከሆነ የተለያዩ ፓኮችን የምትከታተሉ ከሆነ the Jewish American PACs, that's what they do, you know, equally, you know. They have agendas አላቸው ያንን agenda ማን support የሚያደርገው is it the Republican, is it the Democrat? It's based on the agenda. So የኛ ማካሄድ እንደዛ ሊሆን ይገባል and ሁለተኛ our focus should be on you know the critical states, you know, North Carolina and Georgia and Nevada and all those states that you know the ones that are gray like Pennsylvania and Wisconsin and so in these ቦታዎች ላይ really our presence is very very important. Okay, ከዛ ደግሞ you know more ኢትዮጵያኖች ባሉበት ቦታ እንትን ማለት እንችላለን። እንግዲህ አሁን ምንድን ነው የሚመጣው ይሄ ስራ እንዴት ነው ሊሰራ የሚችለው? ከላይ ብቻ የተንጠለጠለ ናሽናል ኤሌክሽን ኮሚቴ is not going to be able to do it. Okay, so it has to be at the grassroots level. ስራው አብዛኛው ስራ at the grassroots level ነው የሚሰራው. You know, all activists, all of you, I'm sure in one form or another, at the grassroots level, activists ታውቃላችሁ እንዴት መሬት ላይ ያለ አሰራር እንዴት እንደሆነ። so የኤፓክ ትልቁ ሚስጥር ማለት እችላለሁ in the last 5 months ምንድነው it has been able to connect with activists on the ground across the nation. ቅድም I think mentioned ተደርጓል I think ከ80 በላይ congressional representatives እና senators አነጋግረናል, you know, on the GR level, governmental relations committee. And what we have done ይሄንን ያደረግነው at the constituent level, the constituent የተደገፈ, because that is what elected officials have ears for. Every place that we had a meeting, it was either arranged by the constituents or we had constituents that were present, because this was very, very important. And now, yanin lezi the 50 state strategy, the campaign 2022, the network. That's the importance of having and building a network. አሁንም እንጠይቃችሁ ኢንፎርሜሽናችሁ በዚህ ላይ ተሳተፉ የምትፈልጉ ኢንፎርሜሽናችሁን ስጡን you know actively participate የምታደርጉ በናሽናል ማነው በስቴት ሌቨል ኮሚቴ ውስጥ ገብታችሁ የምትሰሩ ለመስራት የምትፈልጉ በዲስትሪክት በኩል ገብታችሁ የምትሰሩ እንደዚህ ስማችሁን ብትሰጡን that would be wonderful. ሌላ ቅድም ሜንሽን ተደርጓል, you know, ይሄ ሁሉ ስራ it takes money. ቅድም መስፍን ሜንሽን አድርጎታል. We are APAC is thinking of hiring you know campaign consultants. That takes money. So it's you know የሚሰሩት ነገሮች ሊሰሩ ይችላሉ. The sky is the limit, but it does require money. So እርዳታችሁ ያስፈልጋል. There is not a fundraising, ወደፊት fundraising የሚደረግበት ሁኔታ ይኖራል. ግን on a continuous basis the APAC website ላይ ሄዳችሁ እንትን እንድታደርጉ እንጠይቃለን. And really this is all I have for right now. And the important thing to keep in mind, APAC will provide the infrastructure, will provide the training, will provide the direction. But unfortunately, or fortunately, actually, fortunately, this is a partnership. The partnership, ልንሰራ የምንችለው ነገር ነው, and it will be done. It can be done. So ትብብራችሁ ሁልጊዜም ያለው ትብብራችሁ እንደማይለየን አምናለሁ. And thank you so very much for listening. ሁላችሁ
ሜሮን አንድ ነገር ልጨምር ይቅርታ. ለኢሌክሽን ውስጥ በየስቴቱ የኢፓክ ጋር ኢንቮልቭድ መሆን የምትፈልጉ ሎካል ኮሚቴ ማቋቋምና ከኢፓክ ኢንስቲቱሽናል ሰፖርት የምትፈልጉ ፎርም ተዘጋጅቷል። ኢንፎርሜሽናችሁን እንድትሰጡን የኢፓክ ዌብሳይት ላይ ይለጠፋል። አሁን አልተለጠፈም፣ ግን እስከ በሚቀጥሉት 24 ሰዓት ውስጥ አቬለብል ይሆናል። የኢፓክ ዌብሳይት ላይ ሄዳችሁ ኤሌክሽን ካምፔን የሚለውን ሊንክ ስትመርጡ ጌት ኢንቮልቭድ የሚል ምርጫ ይኖራል። እሱ ጋር ስትገቡ ይሄንን የመሰለ ፎርም ይመጣል። እሱ ውስጥ ገብታችሁ ስማችሁን፣ ኢሜይላችሁን፣ የት ስቴት እንደምትኖሩና ምን መስራት ከኛ ጋር እንደምትፈልጉ ኢንፎርሜሽን ብትሰጡን እና ከዛ ውል ፎሎ አፕ ዊዝ ዩ። ታንክ ዩ።
እሺ፣ አመሰግናለሁኝ። በጣም ኢንፎርማቲቭ የሆነ ፕሬዘንቴሽን ነው። ብዙ ነገር ተምረንበታል ብዬ አምናለሁ። አሁን ጨርሰናል ፕሮግራማችንን። ለጥያቄና መልስ ጥቂት ደቂቃዎችን ሰጥና የመጨረሻ እንዘጋለን ማለት ነው። ይሁን ወደ አንተ አስተላልፍ ያለው ለጥያቄና መልስ ሴሽን ማለት ነው። ይሁን አለ።
በጣም ይቅርታ እንደገና መጣሁኝ። ቅድም ሳላመሰግን ረስቼ አልፌ ነበረ። አሪዞና ያለው ቲማችንን በጣም ከሚገባ በላይ እናመሰግናለን ስለ ትብብራችሁ። ይቅርታ።
እሺ እሺ። ይሁን አለ ይሰማል?
አሎ ታንክ ዩ አሎ። እሺ ጥያቄዎች አሉ እና የመጀመሪያ ጥያቄ for ሔርሜላ. Of course, most of the questions are for ሔርሜላ. She's made an amazing presentation. Is your effort to fight the misinformation getting across to the Tigrayan people? Are other Ethiopians of Tigrayan origin joining you to speak the truth? ሔርሜላ, ይሰማሻል?
Yes.
Okay,
thank you so much, John. I honestly hate this question. I hate this question because it doesn't feel like there's a lot of people. So there's people that a lot of us know. Some of them are in Addis that are Tigrayan Ethiopians that do speak up. Solomon Wodogarima, Froini, her last name escaping me in this moment. And then maybe a handful of folks here in the States as well, or in the diaspora. So there's definitely people, and those people do give me encouragement. As far as everybody else, it's so far it's mind-boggling to me how resistant people are to just consider an alternative narrative, not a narrative that completely maybe discounts what they're saying, but that adds to that and makes it not this completely one-sided story that they have been told. So it's just odd to me. I mean, I guess there's some psychology in there when you've heard one story for so long, or people around you are all saying the same thing, and maybe you've stopped talking to your Ethiopian friends and family members to hear anything different. So you're literally just hearing something echoing back to you. And so I think maybe that does something to people's brain where they're just not open to hearing other things. But what I will also say though, is in general, the Tigrayan culture is very much, and this is, I don't know if it's a Tigrayan culture or if it's a TPLF culture that's passed down into the Tigrayan culture, but it's very intolerant of different voices. You know, it is the extent to which people have gone. I mean, going after my job and career because I asked some questions just shows you how toxic the environment has become, particularly among Tigrayan activists. So I do wonder if there are people that feel the same way, that have a lot of the same questions, that just don't feel like they can speak out. Because when you do, it's like a swarm of people from all over the world that are like calling you, your mama, your brother. Like it's a whole apparatus that just jumps on people. And I am blessed to not feel the fear of that. And part of that, I have to say, is because of my mom. She is also very fearless It very much so. And she's always been education oriented, very independent. And so some of the encouragement to be able to keep doing it is from her. And so I hope so. I hope there's going to be a time where this is not just such a divided conversation. But so far, like I said, I do not love the question because it just reminds me that there is not a lot to talk about in terms of like Tigrayans that are coming out and asking some questions. Thank you.
Okay. So the next question is for you too. It says, how can we help ሔርሜla? She's powerful. She can help break down the TPLF evil agenda and so on. But let me ask you, ሔርሜla, how can we help you? How can we help you to change the narrative of coming from TPLF?
So two things. I've been really hesitant to kind of announce like that I'm going independent because that does require some funding. So, but I've gotten some encouragement from people, and I've started a Patreon and a GoFundMe account to be able to just allow me to do this work since I'm not doing the other work anymore. So that's one. But also, you know, I notice a lot of people have become pretty good in terms of there's like citizen journalists. There's a lot of people on Twitter that they are connecting the dots. They're finding that picture that's not really in Ethiopia, that was from somewhere else, that's being said to be Ethiopia. So people can send me information. I do want to sort of collaborate more with people, so I'm not, you know, so that I can use other people's work to create the stories as opposed to feeling like I have to do it all myself. But that's what it is. Just if you have something original, if you have a photo that you know is verified, if you had a conversation with somebody in a particular region, just sending that information to me so that I can put it together as a story is, I think, the best way. And everybody should join Twitter. I mean, I know everyone's already on too many apps, but especially for the November campaign, if you're not on Twitter, it'd be great to have people on it. Don't just retweet everything. You kind of have to do original tweets from time to time, or quote retweet. Otherwise, it thinks you're a robot that's just retweeting and you'll get blocked out. But yeah, I would encourage everyone that wants to be a part of shifting the narrative to join Twitter. Thank you.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you. And where can we find the link for your GoFundMe account? Can you post it on the chat too?
Sure, I'll do that right now. It's also on my Twitter and Facebook pages.
Wonderful. Okay, so one more question for you, and we'll move forward. Any positive feedback from family, extended family, accepting your efforts or encouraging you or helping you, friends, family?
Yes, a lot of friends, not necessarily of Tigrayan background, and then my mom. That's it.
That's nice. It's good to have your mom's support.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so we'll go to the next question. Someone said, Meron, thank you for your interesting presentation. Can you explain how local elections impact foreign policy? Meron?
Yes. Thank you. They can. You know, one of the things that we have done, as you know, all of the we have two parties right now. Two prominent parties: the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. So they're very connected. They're very connected, and if you are engaged in with one party or the other, you will get networked with whoever is is pushing policies. You will get people, and that's what we encourage. Get involved in national elections. Not only get involved in national elections by working in campaigns, volunteering, donating, and so forth, but also we have to, as a community, the Ethiopian and Eritrean community, as a bloc, and also, the Somalis, and other Asians, as ሔርሜla mentioned earlier, we have to engage with them. We have to network with them and become a voice, so that we have our own candidates. an Ethiopian American candidate go for local offices, run for local offices, and so forth. That will make a difference. The main thing is us being part of the political process. It's so surprising when you get engaged. Once you're there, it's so surprising how many people you get to meet, and that is where your influence is. Talk to somebody you tell your story to somebody, and that somebody gets somebody's other voice. And then the other thing is, for example, in California, what we did was there was a recall election that was going on about, I think, a month and a half ago, and it was a very tight race. So what we decided to do was we decided to support the person that was almost was going to get recalled, which was Governor Davis. And the reason we did that was because in the background, we did a lot of engagement, a lot of work, a lot of talking about his interests in supporting our community in different ways. And in fact, when he came to speak with us, he even made a statement of having an African diaspora division that will focus on African issues. So there is your influence. That's where your influence will come in. And then, of course, we have our local issues, right? We have, it's an aging diaspora community. We need a lot of things. We need community centers. We need access to resource. All those things are going to make us viable and get known as a community. So that's why it's so important to be engaged in local politics.
Thank you.
Governor Davis, I'm sorry, Governor Newsom. I'm aging myself. Governor Newsom.
Okay. Thank you, Meron. We have a few more comments. One was about the financial report. They said thank you for the financial report, and asking us to publish the details on the website and the expenses and the income. To continue doing that on the website, we will do so. That will be something we'll be doing. And actually, there is on the website a record of how much has been pledged, and that's not really represent everything that has been donated. Some money has been donated directly by check, but then all the money that's donated online is reflected on the website. So I just want to mention that to you. So we will post that. Another one is comment again for ሔρμέλα, saying that we support you. Keep doing what you were doing, and that's a support comment for ሔρμέλα. Keep up the wonderful job you're doing. We are with you, it says. Another one, Wasi, were you able to capture all the pledge funds at your fundraiser? If not, can we help? You know, you need more funds to all the lobbying you have to do it all. Yeah, so that's something that maybe Muslim can answer. And another one, how we can be able to expand into different continents and different countries. Maybe Muslim can answer that.
ይሰማል ድምጼ?
ይሰማል።
እሺ፣ አይ በቃ ጨርሰናል። ያው ሰዓታችን አልቋል።
እሺ።
ስለዚህ ሁሉንም ሰው በዚህ ፕሮግራም ላይ የተካፈላችሁ ተሳታፊዎች ሁሉ በጣም እናመሰግናለን። በትዕግስት እስከኛ ጋር እስካሁን ቆይታችሁ አምሹር ይሄ በጣም ብዙ ኢንፎርሜሽን አግኝታችሁበታል ብዬ አስባለሁ። እንዲሁም ደግሞ ፕሬዘንተሮችን በጣም ላመሰግን ፈልጋለሁ። you did well ብዙ ነገር ይቅርታ ሶሪ
I'll take this quick opportunity to just to say both the links for ሔርሜላ's website, the GoFundMe, as well as the monthly membership, touch on the comment section. If you go to the chat, there's also a link to fill out the volunteer intake form. So it's a secured site where you go to just volunteer and put in your information, and then APAC will follow up with you.
Thank you so much. You are a lifesaver. እና ሁላችሁንም እናመሰግናለን። ያው ባጭር ጊዜ የተሰራውን ስራ አይተናል። በአምስት ወር ውስጥ እንደዚህ አይነት ውጤት መታየቱ በእውነት እጅግ የሚያስደንቅ ነው እና ይሄንን ስራ ተጠናክረን ሁላችንም እንድንቀጥል በመላው ዓለም ያለ ነው ኢትዮጵያውያን ይሄን ስራ ለመደገፍ አብረን እንድንቆም ቅድም ነብዩ እንደተናገረው ነው። እኔም ደግሞ ጨምራለሁኝ ሌላ አባባል አንድ ሎሚ 50 ሎሚ ለአንድ ሰው ሸክሙ ለ50 ሰው ደግሞ ጌጡ ነው የሚባለው እና በተቻለ መጠን ያለንን ነገር ተረባርበን የሀገራችንን ክብር የሀገራችንን ስም እናስጠብቅበትን ይሄንን ስራ እንድንደግፍ በዚህ አጋጣሚ ልጠይቅ ፈልጋለሁ። ቅድም በተነገረው መሰረት አሁንም ሊንኩ እዛ ላይ ተደርጓል። ፕሌጅ ማድረግ የምትፈልጉ ሰዎች ፕሌጅ እናድርግ፣ ቃል የገባነውን እንፈጽም። በቅርቡ ደግሞ ያው ሰፋ ያለ የሁለተኛ ዙር የድጋፍ ማሰባሰቢያ ፕሮግራም ስለምናዘጋጅ ከወዲሁ እንድንዘጋጅ ሌሎችንም እንድንቀሰቅስ በግሩፕም ሆነን እየተሰባሰብን ለዚህ ስራ ድጋፍ እንድናደርግ በዚህ አጋጣሚ ላሳስባችሁ ፈልጋለሁ። በአሁኑ ሰዓት እንደምናውቀው ወንድም እህቶቻችን የመከላከያ ሰራዊታችን ሀገራችንን ለማዳን ህይወታቸውን መስዋዕት እያደረጉ የሚገኙበት ጊዜ ነው። ያው ኢትዮጵያን እንደ ሀገር ለማስቀጠል ያላቸውን ዋጋ ሁሉ እየከፈሉ ነው። እኛም ደግሞ አብረናቸው እንድንቆም አብረን ተያይዘን እንድንቆም አባቶቻችን ደማቸውን አፍስሰው አጥንታቸውን ከስክሰው ያቆዩልን ሀገር እኛም ለትውልዳችን ለማስተላለፍ ባለን አቅም ሁሉ እንድንረባረብ ይህንን እድል ደግሞ በማግኘታችን ደስ ሊለን እንደሚገባ ትልቅ ክብር ነው። ምናልባት ለዚህ ቀን ቢሆንስ ወደዚህ ምድር የመጣ ነው እና ለሚቀጥለው ትውልድ የምናስተላልፈው ሌጋሲ ነው የሚሆነው። አንደክምም። በምንሰማው ነገሮች ባድ ኒውስ ምንም ቢኖር እየበረታን ሀገራችንን እንታደግ። በጣም እናመሰግናችኋለን። እንግዲህ ኤልያስ ሙዚቃ ያደርግልንና እሱን እየሰማን መልካም ዊኬንድ ይሁንላችሁ። መስፍን ምናልባት የመጨረሻ የምትለው ነገር ካለ ወደ አንተ ላስተላልፍ። አለዛ
ናይ በጣም እናመሰግናለን። ምንም የሚጨምረው ነገር የለም። በቅርቡ የፈንድሬዚንግ ኢቨንት ላይ ማሳሰቢያ እንልክላችኋለን። እስከዛው ግን ከስቴት ከጫፍ እስከ ጫፍ ያላችሁ ኢትዮጵያውያን ወገኖቻችን በሙሉ በየስቴቱ ያላችሁት ኢትዮጵያውያን ወገኖቻችን በሙሉ በተለያዩ ስብሰባዎች ላይ በሚደረገው ትግል ላይ አብራችሁ ሆናችሁ በጣም በሚያስደንቅ ሁኔታ የሚገርም አይነት ኦርጋናይዜሽን ነው እያየን ያለነው። እያንዳንዱ ስቴት ውስጥ ያለው ህዝብ በደንብ ኦርጋናይዝ ሆኗል እና ስብሰባ ከየሎካል ሴኔተሮች እና ኮንግረሶች ጋር ሲደረግ ከሎካል ኮሚኒቲው ጋር አብሮ በመሆን ነው የሚደረገው እና ያለው ኦርጋናይዜሽን ያለው አንደርስታንዲንግ ያለው ዴዲኬሽን የሚያኮራ ነው እና ለዚህ ነው እነዚህ ቅድም የሰማችኋቸው የተቀጠሩት የላቢስ ሰፖርት የሚያደርጉን ሰዎችም በጣም ከፍተኛ አክብሮት ነው ዲቨሎፕ ያደረጉት ለኢትዮጵያውያን በዚህ አይነት ፍጥነት እንደዚህ አይነት ሁሉም ስቴት ያለው ብሬን ፓወር በጣም ኢምፕሬሲቭ ነው እና we are on the right track አላይን ሆነናል። ኢሹአችን አንድ ነው፣ ፕሮ ኢትዮጵያ የሚባል ነገር ነው። ሌላው ነገር ሁሉ ሰከንዳሪ። የውጪ ሰዎች ኢትዮጵያን አያጠቁም እና ዝም ብለንም አናይም። ስለዚህ ፕሮ ኢትዮጵያ የሆነ አጀንዳ ሁላችንም አለን ነው። እሱን ይዘን እንቀጥላለን እና በያላችሁበት ስልክ ስንደውል ተደራጁና አብረን እንሆን ስንላችሁ ወዲያው ተዘጋጅታችሁ በደንብ ሪሄርስ አድርጋችሁ የምትጠብቁን ወገኖቻችን በሙሉ ስራውን አቅላችሁታል እና አላይንድ ነን። ለመጀመሪያ ጊዜ ሊሆን ይችላል ከዳር እስከ ዳር ያለው የኢትዮጵያ ዲፈረንት ኦርጋናይዜሽንስ እና ኢትዮጵያን አሜሪካን ዲያስፖራ በአንድ ድምፅ መናገር እየጀመረ ነው እና አኮምፕሊሽ እያደረግን ያለነው ያስብነውን ነገር እንቀጥላለን። ተጀመረ እንጂ ምንም ነገር አልቀረም። የአሜሪካን ጂዊሽ ኦርጋናይዜሽን በ1956 ዓመተ ምህረት ተቋቁሞ አሁንም ገና ጦርነት ላይ ናቸው። እነሱ በየቀኑ ልክ ዛሬ እንደተቋቋሙ ነው የሚዋጉት እና ይሄኛው ምንም የሚቆም ነገር አይደለም። ኢትዮጵያ ጠላት ይኖራታል። ብዙ ጠላቶች አሉ፣ ገንዘብ ያላቸው ናቸው። የተለያየ ህዝብ ላቢ ኤጀንሲዎች እና ፖለቲካኖችን ቀጥረው የፈለጉትን እያደረጉ ነው ያሉት እና የሚያልቅ ነገር አይደለም። መጀመሪያው ነው። ቀደም እንግዲህ ሜሮን እንዳለችው ሜሮን ያው ማስተር ስትራቴጂስት ነው የምንላት ለኛ። ስትራቴጂውን ዲዛይን ኤክስፕሌን አድርጋለች ስትራቴጂውን እና እንግዲህ መሬት ላይ አድርጎ ያንን ነገር ስራ ላይ መዋሉ የሁላችንም ነው። ስላዳመጣችሁንና ፕለስ አተኩል ጊዜያችሁን ስለሰጣችሁን ሆነ ሳንዴይ አፍተርኑን በጣም በክብር እናመሰግናለን። የኤልያስ ካለ ይሸኘናል በሙዚቃ እንግዲህ መልካም ዊኬንድ ይሁንላችሁ። ጊዜ ይስጥልኝ።
እግዚአብሔር ይስጥልን። እኛም ማለት እንወዳለን የአሜሪካን ኢትዮጵያን ፐብሊክ አፌርስ ኮሚቴ ማለትም የአሜሪካና ኢትዮጵያ የህዝብ ጉዳይ ኮሚቴ የስራ አስፈጻሚ መርሃ ግብር ልዩ ምክክርና የስራ ሪፖርት ነበር ያደመጥነው በአደባባይ ሚዲያ ለተመልካቾችና ለአድማጮቻችን በዓለም ዙሪያ የቀረበው በኤፓክ ተሰብስበው በኢትዮጵያ ጉዳይ ሳይደራደሩ ሀገርን በማስቀደም ለሚሰሩ ሁሉ አደባባይ ሚዲያም ክብር አለው። በዚህ ሁሉ ጉዳዮች ላይ ደግሞ እግዚአብሔር እንዲረዳቸው እየተማጸንን በሚሰሩ ስራ ደግሞ ሁላችንም ከጎናቸው ሆነን ልንደግፍ ይገባል ብለን እናስባለን። ይህንን በተመለከተ የማጠቃለያውን ሀሳብ ከወደኋላ እንሰማለን። ከዛ አስቀድሞ በዛሬው ወይም በትላንትናው እና በዛሬው ዕለት በነበረው በደሴ አካባቢ እና በኮምቦልቻ አካባቢ በነበረው ትልቅ ውጊያ መግለጫዎች ተሰጥተዋል። ከአማራ ክልል ምክር ቤት እንዲሁም ከመከላከያ ሰራዊት የተሰጠም መግለጫና ማስጠንቀቂያ መልእክቶች አሉ። ጠቅላይ ሚኒስትር ዶክተር አብይም መግለጫ ሰጥተዋል። በቅርብ ጊዜ ከኢቢሲ ያገኘነውንም ወደ እናንተ እናቀርባለን። ጋዜጠኛ ሔርሜላ አረጋዊ እና ነብዩ አስፋው ከጥቂት ደቂቃዎች በኋላ እዚሁ ስቱዲዮ ይገባሉ። ስለዛሬው ውሎ ጠቅለል ያለ የ5 ደቂቃ ማጠቃለያ ይሰጣሉ። እነሱ ወደ ስቱዲዮ እስከሚገቡ ድረስ የጠቅላይ ሚኒስትር አብይን የዛሬ መግለጫ አድምጠን እንመለሳለን።
የመረረውን ትግል ታግለን ጣፋጩን ድል እናጣጥማለን። የሽብር ቡድኑ ሕወሓት ያሳደገች እናቱ ላይ የመከራ ቋጥኝ እንደሚጭን ክፉ ልጅ አሁንም ለኢትዮጵያ የመከራ ቋት መሆኑ ቀጥሏል። በጥላቻ ፕሮፓጋንዳው አነሳስቶ የሰበሰባቸውን ኃይሎች ይዞም በ4 ግንባሮች ተኩስ ከፍቶ ሀገር የማፍረስ ተግባሩን ገፍቶበታል። መከላከያ ሰራዊታችንና የእናት ሀገር ጥቃት ግድ የሚለው የወገን ጦር በአንድነት ሆነው ኢትዮጵያ ላይ የተከፈተውን ጥቃት ለመመከት በሁሉም ግንባሮች ተሰልፈዋል። ጠላት የመጨረሻ አቅሙን አሟጦ ለማጥቃት የሚያደርገውን ጥረት ሰራዊታችን በምድርና በአየር እየታገዘ እንዳይነሳ አድርጎ እየሰበረው ይገኛል። በሶስቱ ግንባሮች እንደማያዋጣው የተገነዘበው አሸባሪው ሕወሓት ሰሞኑን ያለ የሌለ ኃይሉን ወደ ወሎ ግንባር አምጥቷል። ለበቀለበት ህዝብ ጨምሮ ለማንም ርኅራኄ የሌለው ቡድኑ በዘመቻው ከ12 ዓመት ሕፃን እስከ 65 ዓመት አዛውንት ያገኘውን ሁሉ ሰብስቦ አዝምቷል። ይህን ሲያደርግ ዓላማው 2 ነው። አንድም ያሰማራው ኃይል ጨርሶ ተስፋ እንዳይቆርጥና ሞራሉ እንዲያንሰራራ ለማድረግ በወሎ በኩል ድል የማድረግ ምኞት አድሮበታል። 2ም በቅርቡ አየር ኃይላችን ጥቃት ሰንዝሮ ያወደመበትን ከባድ መሳሪያም ከመከላከያ ሰራዊት ማርኮ ለመተካት በማሰብ የሞት ሽረት ትግል አድርጓል። ለድል ቋምጦ መጥቶ ጠላት በወሎ ግንባር ሰፊ ቁጥር ያለው ኃይሉን ያጣ ሲሆን ጀግናው ሰራዊታችን በሁሉም መስክ መስዋዕትነትን ከፍሎ እየተጋደለ ነው። በቀጣይ ጊዜያትም ጠላት የተረፈውን ኃይል አሰባስቦ ተመሳሳይ ጥቃቶችን መሰንዘሩ አይቀርም። የጠላት የጥንካሬ ምንጭ የኛ ድክመትና መዘናጋት እንደሆነ አውቀን ነቅተንና ተባብረን ልንጠብቀው ይገባል ይላል ጠቅላይ ሚኒስትር አብይ አህመድ ያወጡት መግለጫ። ብዛታችን ጥንካሬ የሚሆነው ተግባብተን በአንድነት ስንቆም ነው። መነጣጠላችን ለጠላት ይመቻል በሚነዛው ፕሮፓጋንዳ መረበሻችን እሱን ካልሆነ በቀር ማንንም አይጠቅምም። እርስ በርሳችን መደማመጥና መተባበር ከቻል መፍረክረክ የጀመረው የጠላት ጉልበት ይንበረከካል። እንደ ክር የሰለለ ምኞቱም ይጨነግፋል። ሀገር ለማጥፋት የመጣ መንጋ ሀገር ለማዳን የተነሳን ኃይል ይረብሸው ይሆናል፣ ሊያሸንፈው ግን አይቻለው። ስራችንን በተናበበና በተቀናጀ መልኩ ከማከናወን ባለፈም በመካከላችን ሆኖ ለጠላት የሚሰራውን የሕወሓት ወኪል በንቃት መከታተል ያስፈልጋል። ለዘመናት ከጠላት ጋር የጥቅም ትስስር የፈጠሩ ሰዎች ዛሬም በጉያችን ሆነው የጠላትን ምኞት ከዳር ለማድረስ ደፋ ቀና ይላሉ። ስለዚህ ሁሉም ዜጋም ከጸጥታ ኃይሎች ጋር በመሆን የጠላት ወኪሎችን ማጋለጥ ይገባዋል። በሚገጥመን ፈተና ሳንረበሽ ሁላችንም የበኩላችንን ሚና ከተወጣን ፈተናችንን የሚወገድበት ጊዜው ሩቅ አይሆንም ይላል ጠቅላይ ሚኒስትር አብይ አህመድ ያስተላለፉት መልእክት። በተቃራኒው ተግባሩን ትተን የምንጠይቅ ብቻ ከሆንን የድላችን ዕድሜ ይዘገያል። ሀገርን ከጥቃት የመከላከል ኃላፊነት የጥቂቶች ሳይሆን የሁላችንም ነው። እያንዳንዱ ዜጋ ከኔ ምን ይጠበቃል፣ እኔ ምን እያደረግኩ ነው ማለት አለበት። የእሱ ደህንነት ሲጠበቅ እሱ ሰላም ውሎ ሲያድር ሰርቶ እንዲያተርፍ ለሱ ሲሉ ሌሎች የሚሰውበት ምክንያት የለም። ሁሉም ከወዙ ጨልፎም ከደሙ ቀንሶና ካጥንቱ ፈልጦ በሚያበረክተው አስተዋጽኦ ነው ሀገር ነፍስ ኖሯት በሁለት እግሯ የምትቆመው። ለኢትዮጵያ የመሞት ግዴታ የሁላችንም እንጂ የተለየ ሞት እንዲሞት የሚጠበቅበት የተለየ አካል የለም። ስለዚህ ህዝባችን የክት ጉዳዩን ለጊዜው አቆይቶም ለማጥፋት የመጣውን አሸባሪውን ሕወሓት ለመመከት ለመቀልበስና ለመቅበር ማንኛውንም መሳሪያና አቅም ይዞ በህጋዊ አደረጃጀት መዝመት አለበት። ይህ ታላቅ ህዝብ ታላላቅ ታሪካዊ ፈተናዎችን ድል የነሳው ዳር ቆሞ በማየት ወይም በጥቂት ድል ረክቶ በመቀመጥ አይደለም። የተሰነዘሩብንን ጥቃቶች እያሸነፍነው በአንድነት ለሀገራችን ጸንተን ዘብ በመቆም ነው። የቀደምት አያቶቻችንን የጀግንነት ፈለግ በመከተል ማንኛውንም እኩይ ተግባር ማክሸፍ እንደምንችል ማመን አለብን ይላል ጠቅላይ ሚኒስትር አብይ አህመድ በወቅታዊ አገራዊ ጉዳይ ላይ ያስተላለፉት መግለጫ። አሁን የገጠሙን ፈተናዎች የማይታለፉና ውስብስብ ሊመስሉ ይችላሉ። ነገር ግን ቀደምቶቻችን ካዩት መከራ የሚከብዱ አይደሉም። ቁልፉ ጉዳይ በአንድነት መቆም፣ በጥሞና መደማመጥና ተቀናጅቶ መንቀሳቀስ ናቸው። ይህን ካደረግን የቀደመው ትውልድ ሀገርን ጠብቆ ወደኛ ማስተላለፍ እንደቻለው እኛም ኢትዮጵያውያን አስከብረን ለቀጣዩ ትውልድ እናወርሳለን። ጫጫታና ማወናበዱ ቢበረታም ዛሬን በትኩረት እንድንቆም ያላንዳች ማመንታት ኢትዮጵያን በአንድነት ከጥቃት እንድንከላከላት ጥሬን አቀርባለሁ ይላል ጠቅላይ ሚኒስትር አብይ አህመድ ያስተላለፉት መግለጫ። ኢትዮጵያ በልጆቿ ጥረት ታፍራና ተከብራ ለዘላለም ትኑር። ፈጣሪ ኢትዮጵያና ሕዝቦቿን ይባርክ።
እንግዲህ እንደሰማችሁት የኢትዮጵያው ጠቅላይ ሚኒስትር ዶክተር አብይ አህመድ የሰጡትን መግለጫ እና በኢቢሲ የቀረበውን እንደወረደ ነበር ያቀረብነው። አድማጮቻችን እና ተመልካቾቻችን እናንተው ከመግለጫው የሰማችሁትን በእናንተው ደግሞ የሚተረጎሙ እንድትተረጉሙ እንደወረደ አቅርበናል። በዚህ ጉዳይ እና በሌሎች መግለጫዎች ትንታኔ በሌላ ጊዜ እንመለሳለን። የዛሬውን ሰዓት ለመጠቀም here I'm joined by ሔርሜላ አረጋዊ and ነብዩ አስፋው. Welcome ሔርሜላ and ነብዩ.
Thank you. Nice to see you guys again.
Nice to see you. እንግዲህ ረጅም ሰዓት በኤፓክ ዙሪያና በኢትዮጵያ ሀገራችን ጉዳይ አብሮ በሚሰሩት መልካም በጎ የሚያስቡ ኢትዮጵያውያንና አሜሪካውያን ጋር ውይይት ስታደርጉ ቆይታችኋል። ነብዩ ካንተ ለመጀመር ያክል የዛሬውን ውይይት ጠቅለል ያለውን ፍሬ ነገሮች በአንተ ሳምራይዝ ቢደረግና ኢትዮጵያውያን ከዚህ ወዲያ ወይም ኢትዮጵያን አሜሪካውያን ኤርትራውያን ለሀገር የሚያስቡ በአራቱ ማዕዘናት በዓለም ዙሪያ ላሉ ሰዎች ሁሉ ሰላምን፣ ፍቅርን የሚያስቡት በትግራይ ላለው ሰላምን የሚያስቡት በደቡብ ላለው ሰላምን የሚያስቡት በአዲስ አበባ ላለው ሰላምን በአራቱ ማዕዘናት ሰላምን ለሚያስቡ ኢትዮጵያውያን ከኤፓክ እና ከእናንተ ከወንድሞቻችን እና እህቶቻችን ብርቱ ታጋዮች ጋር ምን በጎ ስራዎችን መስራት አለባቸው ብለህ ታስባለህ? በዛውም ለሔርሜላ እንግዲህ ጥያቄውን ሔርሜላ ሰምታለች ብዬ አስባለሁ። So just pretty much it's a wrap up of the day you had, and then we'd like to hear how your ሔርሜላ TV or ሔርሜላ አረጋዊ YouTube and independent journalism that you tremendously encouraging people to follow has been doing, and I hope you got a lot of encouraging message from everybody around the world, and everybody's there to help you, and we like to hear from you in what way we can help you, and then our IT team could provide your link at the bottom of the comments. So first, let me begin with Nabiyu with the previous question, and then you will follow up. Then we will wrap up our long awaited day discussion. Nabiyu.
Thank you. በመጀመሪያ ደግሜ አደባባይ ሚዲያን ላመሰግን ፈልጋለሁ። የኢፓክ ቨርቹዋል ኮንፈረንስ በቀጥታ ለህዝብ ስላስተላለፋችሁልን በጣም ስለ አገልግሎታችሁ እግዚአብሔር ይባርካችሁ። ቴንክ ዩ እናመሰግናለን። እንግዲህ አይ ኖ ሚቲንጉ ትንሽ ረዘም ያለ ነበር። ምናልባት ሙሉንም ማየት ላልቻላችሁ ሰዎች ጠቅለል አድርጌ አንዳንድ ፍሬ ሀሳቡን አካፍላለሁ። ከቻላችሁ በኋላ ሪፕሌይ አደባባይ ሚዲያ ላይ ሄዳችሁ እንድታዩት ኢንካሬጅ አደርጋለሁ እና ኤኢፓክ የአሜሪካን ኢትዮጵያን ፖለቲካል አክሽን ኮሚቴ ከተቋቋመ 5 ዓመቱ ነው። የፓክ ማለት እንደዛ አይነት ኮሚቴ በአሜሪካ ውስጥ ብዙ ኮሚኒቲዎች ጠንካራ ኮሚኒቲዎች አቋቁመውት የሚሰሩበት አይነት ዘይቤ ነው። ብዙ ስለ አይሁድ አሜሪካኖች ተነጋግረናል፣ ስለ ኩባን አሜሪካኖች ተነጋግረናል። ይሄ በአይነቱ ለመጀመሪያ የሆነ ታሪካዊ የሆነ የኢትዮጵያን ዳያስፖራ ኮሚኒቲ በዛ ደረጃ የሚያስቀምጥ ትልቅ ድርጅት ነው። በተለያዩ ድርጅቶች የተደገፈ ነው። ፓርትነሮች አሉት። ከዛም በተጨማሪ ደግሞ በህዝብ የሚደገፍ ድርጅት ነው እና በአምስት ወር ብቻ ነው ኤኢፓክ ስራ ከጀመረ፣ ግን በእውነት የሰራው ስራ የ5 ዓመት ስራ ነው። በጣም ድንቅ ነው እና ቅድም በኮንፈረንሱ ላይ የሜርኩሪ የሚባለው የሎቢ ፈርም በሱ በኤኢፓክ ተቀጥሮ ብዙ ስራ እየሰሩ ነው። ከሜርኩሪ የመጡ ሰዎች ንግግር አድርገዋል። ለምሳሌ ኮንግረስማን ቶቢ ሞፌት አለ፣ የሴኔተር ዴቪድ ቪተር። እነዚህ ሰዎች ሁሉ በዩናይትድ ስቴትስ ኮንግረስ እና ሴኔት ተመርጠው ሲያገለግሉ የነበሩ ሰዎች ሪታየር ያደረጉ አሁን ደግሞ በሎቢ ስራ የሚሰሩ ናቸው። በትልቅ ዋጋ ነው ይሄ ሁሉ የተገኘው እና ትልቅ ስራ እየሰሩልን ነው። ከተለያዩ ሴኔተሮች ከተለያዩ ኮንግረስማኖች ጋር ግንኙነትን በመፍጠር በር ከፍተውልናል። ለምሳሌ ከ100 በላይ የተለያዩ ሚቲንጎች እንዲደረጉ በር ከፍተዋል። በዚህም ስብሰባዎች ላይ ለምሳሌ በየስቴቱ ካሉ ወገኖች ጋር በዛ ከሚኖሩ ወገኖችን በመጋበዝ ሚቲንግ ሲደረግ ቆይቷል። በሬዞሉሽን ለምሳሌ በሃውስ ሬዞሉሽን 445 ተነድፎ የነበረውን ለምሳሌ አብረን በህብረት በመስራት ከኬረን ባስ ጋር በመስራት እንዳያችሁት በጣም ኢትዮጵያን ያጠቃ ኢትዮጵያን የሆነ ጅል የነበረው ሊያልፍ የነበረውን ህግ ሙሉ ለሙሉ ተገልብጦ ፌር እንዲሆን ሞር ፌር እንዲሆን የተደረገው በዚህ ስራ ነው። ብዙ ኮንግረስማን ኬረን ባስ እንግዲህ ሌላ ቀርቶ የቲፒኤልኤፍ የህፃናት ወታደሮችን እንደሚጠቀም የኦኤልኤ ኦሮሞ ሊበሬሽን አርሚ የሚባለው ከሕወሓት ጋር አብሮ የሚሰራውን አሸባሪ ቡድን በማውገዝ እንደዚሁም ደግሞ ቲፒኤልኤፍ ከትግራይ አልፎ አማራና አፋር ህዝብ ላይ የትግራይ ህዝብ ላይም ያረገ ያለውን በደል የሚያወግ ስቴትመንት ሁሉ የሰማነው የዚህ የኢንጌጅመንት የኮንግረስ ኢንጌጅመንት ስራ ነው። ኢፓክ ትልቅ ሚና በዚህ ተጫውቷል። ሌላ ቀርቶ ትላንትናም ስንነጋገርበት የነበረው ከስቴት ዲፓርትመንት የወጣው ስቴትመንት ትልቅ ለውጥ ያሳየ ማዕበሉን የቀየረ አይነት ስራ ነው። ትዝ ይላችሁ እንደሆነ ምናልባት 8 ወር 7 ወር በፊት ኦልሞስት በየቀኑ ነበር ከኮንግረስ ኢትዮጵያን ወንጀለኛ ያረገ የሚወጣ ስቴትመንት ኦልሞስት የቲፒኤልኤፍ ፕሮፓጋንዳ ነበር የሚነገር። ይሄ ሁሉ እንዲገለበጥ የተደረገው በዚህ ስራ ነው እና ይሄ ስራ ደግሞ የህዝብ የናንተ ድጋፍ እንደሚያስፈልገው ጥሪ ቀርቧል። ኢንጌጅድ እንድንሆን በሁሉም መንገድ ጥሪ ተደርጓል። በፒአር በኩልም በፓብሊክ ሪሌሽን አሌክስ ዋከር የሚባለው የማርኬቲንግ ፕሮፌሽናል በሜርኩሪ በኩል አንዳንድ መረጃዎች አድርጓል። በሲኤንኤን እና በመሳሰሉት ሲደረግ የነበሩት ብዙ ዲስኢንፎርሜሽኖች አሁንም እህታችን ሔርሜላ እያጋለጠች ያለችው። በሜርኩሪም በኩል ብዙ ስራ እየተሰራ ነው። ለምሳሌ የሆነ ዲስኢንፎርሜሽን ሲመጣ ኢሚዲየትሊ ኤዲቶሪያል ቦርዶችን ኮንታክት በማድረግ በመሳሰሉት ነገር ሲተባበሩ ቆይተዋል። ከዛም በተጨማሪ በጣም ትንሽ የማይባል ቁጥራቸው ብዙ የሆነ በዩሮፕም በሰሜን አሜሪካም የኦፒኒየን op-ed የሚባሉ ወረቀቶች ወይንም አርቲክሎች እንዲወጡ አስተዋጽኦ አድርገውልናል። ስለዚህ አትሊስት ሳምዋት we're not there yet, still disinformation በጣም ብዙ ነው። ግን የት እንደነበርና አሁን ያለንበትን ስታዩ በጣም ብዙ ፕሮግረስ እየተፈጠረ ነው። አንዳንድ ሚዲያዎችም እየነቁ መልካም ፌር የሆነ አሰስመንት እየሰጡ የምናይበት ጊዜ ደርሰናል። ይሄ ሁሉ በዚህ ስራ ነው የሚደረገው ማለት ነው እና ከዛም በተጨማሪ የኤኢፓክ የፋይናንሻል ሲቹዌሽን በጥልቅ መግለጫ ተደርጓል። በኦዲተር ኦዲት እየተደረገ በፕሮፌሽናሊ ሃንድል የሚደረግ ነው። ኤኢፓክ በህዝብ ዶኔሽን ነው የሚንቀሳቀሰው። ስለዚህ በጣም ብዙ ወገኖች ከየስቴቱ የሚችሉትን ያህል አስተዋጽኦ እያደረጉ ነው። ለምሳሌ ለሜርኩሪ የሚከፈለው ብዙ ብር ነው ለሜርኩሪ ለዋቢዎቹ። ይሄ ደግሞ ያለ ህዝብ እርዳታ ስለማይቻል የወጭ ገቢው በሙሉ ዝርዝር ተሰጥቷል። ሪፕላይ ላይ ሄዳችሁ ማየት ትችላላችሁ። አቅም ያላችሁ ደግሞ መርዳታችሁን እንዳታቆሙ ኤኢፓክ ዌብሳይት ላይ ሄዶ አስተዋጽኦ ማድረግ ይቻላል። እና ምንድነው የሚቀጥለው እርምጃ በሲቪክ ኢንጌጅመንት ደግሞ ህዝቡን ለማበረታታት መልእክት ተላልፏል። አሁን የተሰራ ያለው ስራ በመቀጠል ሲሆን የህብረተሰባችን በየስቴቱ ያለነው ደግሞ የቮቲንግ ላይ ኢንቮልቭድ መሆን መምረጥ ማስመረጥ ምን ያህል ጠቀሜታ እንዳለው ድምጻችንን ምን ያህል እንደሚያጎላው መልእክቶች ተላልፈዋል። ለዚህም ደግሞ በኤኢፓክ በፕሮፌሽናል ዲዛይን የተደረገ ኢንስቲትዩሽናል ሰፖርት ተዘጋጅቷል። እሱም ቅድም እህታችን ሜሮን አሃዱ በዝርዝር አስረድተዋለች። ኮሚቴዎች ተቋቁሟል፣ ኢንፍራስትራክቸር ተቋቁሟል። ሪሊ በየስቴቱ በተለይ በስዊንግ ስቴቶች ያሉ ወገኖች ኦርጋናይዝድ ሆነው የሎካል ኢሌክሽናቸው ላይ ፌደራል ኢሌክሽናቸው ላይ አክቲቭ ለመሆን ለሚፈልጉት ኢንፍራስትራክቸሩ ተዘግቷል። እንደውም አሁን አንድ ፕሮፌሽናል የካምፔን ማኔጀር ሊቀጠር ንግግር ላይ ነን። ቅድም መስፍን እንደተናገረው ኮንፈረንሱ ላይ ይሄ ማለት እንግዲህ ፕሮፌሽናል የሆነ የአሜሪካ ፖለቲካ ውስጥ ለምሳሌ አሁን የኦባማ ካምፔን ላይ የሚሰራ ሰው ነበር፣ ያውቁታል እንዴት እንደሚደረግ። እነዚህን ሁሉ ለማምጣትና በስትራቴጂ በብልህነት በሲስተማቲክ ወይ ለመስራት መሰረቶቹ እየተዘረጉ ነው። አሁን በቨርጂኒያ ያለውም የዚህ የመጀመሪያው ስቴፕ ነው። ግን በሚቀጥለው ምርጫ በተለይ በ2022 ምርጫ ላይ በጣም ሰፋ ያለ እንቅስቃሴ እንደሚደረግ እናምናለን። ለዚህም አንድ ሊንክ ተዘጋጅቷል። በኢፓክ ዌብሳይት ገብታችሁ ሳይን አፕ ማድረግ ይቻላል። በየስቴቱ የተለያየ ኮሚቴ ለማቋቋም ይፈልጉና ከሞላ ጎደል ይሄ ነው። በእውነት እኔ በጣም ነው ደስ ያለኝ ዲያቆን የኢፓክ ይሄን ያህል መበርታት። የሁሉ ስራ የተሰራው በ5 ወር ነው። እንግዲህ የሚቀጥሉት 5 ወርና አመት የት እንደምንደርስ መገመት አያዳግትም።
አመሰግናለሁ ነብዩ። ለአንድ ደቂቃ ወደ አንተ መለሳለሁ። ወደ ሔርሜላ ልሂድና ሔርሜላ what's independent journalism and what are you doing so far?
Well, so I worked for a network, CBS, that is a lot like the other networks here, and I can't really do all that I'm doing and still stay with that job. So I was really forced to choose, but it just felt like something that I couldn't say no to, which is to go in the direction of continuing to analyze some of the reporting on Ethiopia. And it's not just an Ethiopian story. Come to find out, so many countries, Haitians, Venezuelans, Bolivians, have dealt with exactly almost the same thing that Ethiopians are dealing with right now. So that has given me encouragement to just really pursue this, because once we can connect all the dots, and already people are already connecting all the dots, you'll find people beyond Ethiopia will feel the pain of having the false narrative told while their country's going into chaos with external actors supporting rebel groups or small armed groups that are trying to take down the government. So I don't have an agenda except the truth. A lot of Ethiopians support that, which is so amazing. I said people are so hungry for the truth, which is why you're seeing the kind of response and reaction to some of the work that I'm doing. And it feels right. I have a YouTube channel, actually changed it to ሔርሜላ TV, so it matches everything else. I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook, and Instagram, all ሔርሜላ TV. The banner that's on my YouTube channel is from you guys. So thank you so much. It looks beautiful, it looks professional. I don't have a lot of graphic skills. I have a lot of video editing and writing skills, but that would have taken me maybe forever and a half to make. So thank you so much. And I'm still just kind of working on branding, getting a proper space and things like that, because it's all just sort of started and is new. And I appreciate everyone's support. People have been so incredibly generous, beyond my imagination, with the GoFundMe page that's up next to me right now. If you want to do a monthly membership of any amount, Patreon is for independent artists and journalists. So you can go to Patreon, patreon.com. But I think GoFundMe is just easier for everybody. And so, yeah, I'm excited. I mean, this is what I'm passionate about. I really do believe in journalism and truth and its power to save people's lives and bring people together. And the opposite side of that is when bad journalism divides people that shouldn't be divided, divides whole families and friends, let alone like ethnicities, race, or gender, or nationality. So this is why I entered this field, and I'm just so excited to be able to do it or start it with, analyzing the reporting of my country of origin. Thank you.
That's wonderful. I always say there is a third side of a story. There's A side of story, B side of story, then there's a third side of story, which is the truth. So I think you are working very vigilantly on the independent journalism for your quest for the truth that you have been doing. You went left to right, and then you did your soul search, and then you find your soul search, and you want to pursue with independent journalism. So we have to be, I encourage people to be practical on pragmatic on their words. ማለት የምፈልገው ነብዩ መጨመር ይችላል። ሁሌ በቃል ብቻ ማድረግ አይደለም የሚገባን፣ በተግባር ነው። ፍቅራችንን ማሳየት ያለብን በተግባር ነው። ወንድሞቻችንና እህቶቻችን ለሚሰሩት ስራ ተግባራዊ ምላሽ ያስፈልጋል። ጎፈንድሚ አድቨርታይዝ አድርጋለች። ዩቲዩብ ላይ ያሳያችሁት ትልቅ እንቅስቃሴ አለ። I think it's less, I would say like it's about 4 hours less than 7 days that your YouTube channel subscriber went from 8.8 when you were live on Adebabay Media a week ago to nearly 21K. So we like to see this YouTube channel subscribers to be 50K in a month, even less time. So I think we have to be pragmatic and practical with all what we do, and we should necessarily show our love with a very practical approach. So I encourage people to go and donate on the GoFundMe. This is not about necessarily her. It's about the truth. So we all are looking on a true soul search. So እግዚአብሔር እውነቱን እንዲገልጥ ነብዩ በሔርሜላ በምትሰራው ስራ እንድጨምር እፈልጋለሁ። ለሔርሜላ አማርኛ እንደምትሰማ አውቃለሁ፣ ነገር ግን እንደ እንግሊዝኛው በደንብ አጥርታ ስለማታወራ
መለማመድ አለብኝ።
That's wonderful. I think a lot of people want to hear that you say some kind of word. Just
yeah. Well, interview በሙሉ like በአማርኛ መግለጽ ያን ያህል አይመቸኝም። So መጀመሪያ ቋንቋውን መለማመድ አለብኝ, and then when I can't do whole interviews because there's so much I want to say in Amharic, but yes, በደንብ ይገባኛል. I grew up in Addis. Amharic is the easiest second language to me, so I just have an accent, so you have to deal with that. Can I say something really quick? Two things. Like one, I just want to just say really quick, like the type of work that, I've started to do, like putting together these video explainers, and I edit it, I write it, I edit. Obviously, I'm on air with it. They do take a lot of time, but I was still with that. I still was a little bit hesitant to share with people, like, you know, I'm going independent, if you can support me. But a few people actually encouraged me and said, hey, don't you have a Patreon account or start a GoFundMe? Why don't you do that? And I said, you know what? I am doing the work. It's honest work. And so when I shared that, just the kind of support that I got was incredibly amazing. So I really appreciate everybody for that. It just goes to show when you do something from a place of conviction and to do the right thing, like something will catch you. God will send people to support you. And then the other thing I just wanted to say really quick is people like Nebu, people like you, Deacon, and Glean, like you guys have been doing the work for so long, way before I was even aware of what was going on in terms of advocacy and humanitarian issues. And I know that if there were more independent journalism, more journalism that was not connected to the agenda of the US or another government or what's the case, your work would have been a little bit easier. And that's what I hope in the future. The kind of organizations like APAC, and APAC is I guess what I meant, that's what it was today, and Glean, I don't want people to have to work harder than necessary for basic humanitarian issues because an entire infrastructure of media is working against that based on false narrative. So I just hope this is the last time Ethiopia goes through something like this. And the next time around, we're going to be telling the story and the others are going to have to follow and figure it out. So that's the goal long term. And just, you know, hope that it actually saves lives and doesn't put us in a situation like we're in right now.
We hope so and we pray so. Nabiyu, last remark regarding Virginia election and ሔርሜላ's YouTube. So you can start with ሔርሜላ's YouTube and ሔርሜላ's independent journalism, what the Ethiopian community or Eritrean community or any human being could do for this good cause. Let's hear your point on that, and then on Virginia governor's tight race. We want to hear from you. You are welcome to endorse whoever you like. As a media, we cannot endorse whoever we like, but we can present our points. But you are welcome to endorse. And your closing remark, and ሔርሜላ, you would have last say you like after Nabiyu, and then we will finish our program today. Nabiyu, please.
Thank you. ዳቆን ግዛቸው መጀመሪያ ስለ ኢንዲፔንደንት ሚዲያው አንድ ሁለት ነገር ብናገር የሚዲያ ምን አይነት ጥቅም እንዳለው ምን አይነት ኢምፓክት እንዳለው እኔ ሪሊ እንደ ዘንድሮ ነው የገባኝ እና አደባባይ ሚዲያ ለምሳሌ ኢንዲፔንደንት ሚዲያ አደባባይ ሚዲያ በመኖሩ ምን ያህል ስራችን እንደቀለለልን ምን ያህል መደራጀት እንደቻለን መግለጽ ያራግተኛል ለዚህ ነው you know ይሄ ኮሚኒቲ ስራ 15 ዓመት በላይ ኢንቮልቭ ሆኛለሁ ግን ሚዲያ ሳይኖረን እንደ አደባባይ አይነት ሚዲያ ሳይኖረን በፊት በጣም ከባድ ነበር ኢቭን እንኳን ከዓለም ከዚህ ዓለም ሁሉ እንደዚህ ኢንፎርሜሽን ለማስተራጨት መቻል አንድ ከተማ ውስጥ አንድ ሰፈር ውስጥ እንኳን ፍላየር እየበተንክ ስራው ብዙ ነበር ስለዚህ ደግሜ አሁንም አደባባይ ሚዲያን ማመስገን ፈልጋለሁ የሔርሜላ በእውነት just a fearless courageous work you do and we have a name for women like you in Ethiopia. It's called Jagnit, and that's very well deserving. So Jagnit Nash, and we support ሔርሜላ because she brings in the American perspective, right? And that's something really at this point only she can do. We can't do that. She has the background, the credibility, the know-how of how the Western media operate, and for her to be in there with the intention of telling the truth and with the intention of, you know, representing the voice, the real voices of the people, it's very important. And that's why I'm very happy to support her and that I'm absolutely just wowed by our community is watching it and support and the love that's coming. So ይሄንን ነው የምለው አደባባይ ሚዲያም ያረጋችሁ ያላችሁት በጣም ትልቅ ነገር ነው እናመሰግናለን እና የቨርጂኒያ ኢሌክሽን ወደዛ ለመመለስ ኢሌክሽን ኖቬምበር 2 ማለት ማክሰኞ ነው በ50ዎቹም ስቴቶች ውስጥ ኢሌክሽን አለ በየስቴቱ ኢሌክሽን አለ እና በቨርጂኒያ ላይ ብዙ ፎከስ ያደረግንበት ምክንያት ያው ትልቅ ሬስ ነው ትልቅ የገቨርነንስ ሬስ ነው ግን በየስቴቱ ያለ ነው በሙሉ ቅድም እንደተነገረው ቮት ማድረግ አለብን ቮት ስናደርግ ሪፐብሊካን መምረጥ ዴሞክራትን መምረጥ ለውጥ የለውም የፈለጋችሁትን ብትመርጡ መምረጥ ብቻ አለባችሁ ይሄንን እንደ ባህል መያዝ አለብን ቅድምም ደጋግሜ የተናገርኩት በየአመቱ ታክስ እንደምንሰራው ምርጫ መምረጥም እንደዛ ማየት አለብን እንደ ባህል ማየት አለብን እና በቨርጂኒያ የገቨርነንስ ሬስ ግለን ያንኪን and ቴሪ መካለፍ ሁለቱንም ኢንጌጅ አድርገናል ከሁለቱም ጋር ለሳምንታት በካምፔኛቸው ጋር ስንነጋገር ቆይተናል ባለፈው ሳምንት በቨርጂኒያ አሌክሳንድሪያ በተደረገው የፌስቲቫል ላይ መልእክት ልከው ቪዲዮ ልከዋል ትላንትናም በአደባባይ ሚዲያ ሲታይ ነበር የገቡልን ፕሮሚሶች አሉ ለምሳሌ ግለን ያንኪን በኢትዮጵያ ጋር ያለውን የትሬድ ግንኙነት የአጎዋ ትልቅ ነጥብ ያነሳ ነው እሱ ነው ትሬድ እና የንግድ ልውውጥን እንደሚደግፍ በሚችለው ያህል ቨርጂኒያ ከኢትዮጵያ ጋር ያላት የኤክስፖርት ኢምፖርት ግንኙነት እንዲጠነክር የፍሪ ማርኬት እንዲጠነክር ኢትዮጵያ ብሎ ሜንሽን አድርጎ በቪዲዮ ስቴትመንት አድርጎ ልኮልናል የቴሪ መካለፍ የመጣው ቪዲዮ more about local education የመሳሰሉትን የሄልዝ ኬር አይነቶችን የጠቀሰው ስለ ኢትዮጵያ ፓርቲኩላርሊ አላነሳም የሰጠው ቪዲዮ ላይ ነገር ግን ከትላንትና ወዲያ ስቴትመንት በጽሁፍ ልኮልን ነበር እሱም ታይቷል በሱ ላይ ምንድነው ከተመረጥኩ በኋላ ኮሚቴ አቋቁማለሁ የአፍሪካን ዳያስፖራ ኮሚቴ አቋቁማለሁ እሱ ኮሚቴ ውስጥ ኢትዮጵያኖችን እናንተን ጨምርና እንነጋገራለን ምን ማድረግ እንደምንችል ለቨርጂኒያ ብሎ ገብቷል እና እንደምናየው እንቅስቃሴ በቨርጂኒያ በመሬት ላይ እንደምናየው ህዝቡ በጣም እየተንቀሳቀሰ ነው መምረጣችሁን ግን እንዳትዘናጉ ምክንያቱም ይሄ በ100 ቮት በ150 ቮት በአንድ ቮት እንኳን ሊበለጥ ወይም እንትን የሚችል ነው ስለዚህ ምረጡ ለማለት ፈልጋለሁ የቴሪ መካለስ ወይንም ግለን ያንኪንስ አለ አይኖ ብዙ ህብረተሰባችን ለግለን ያንኪንስ ነው የሚመርጠው ጥሩ ይመስለኛል ግን ከሞር ኢንዶርስ ከማድረግ ይልቅ እኔ ማለት እንፈልገው ምረጡ ሾአፕ አርጋችሁ ምረጡ ቁጥራችን ያስፈልጋል because 100,000 በላይ ኢትዮጵያኖች ቨርጂኒያ አሉ እና ስንመርጥ ለማን እንደመረጥን አይታወቅ እንጂ ቁጥሩ ዴታ ውስጥ ይገባል ስለዚህ 100,000 ህዝብ አለን ብለን እየተናገርን 50,000 የሚመርጣል ተብሎ 1,000 ሰው እንኳን ሳይመርጥ ከእንትን ካለ ደቀልድ ነው የምንታየው ወደፊት ስለዚህ ይሄ ለኢትዮጵያ ብላችሁ ኤርትራውያን ወገኖቻችንም ለሀገሮቻችን ለኤርትራ ብላችሁ ለማንንም ቢሆን የምትመርጡት ማክሰኞ ሾአፕ አርጋችሁ መምረጥ አለባችሁ እና ይሄንን ነው በጣም በጥብቅ ማስተላለፍ የምፈልገው የዴሞክራቲክ ፓርቲ በአጠቃላይ በአሁኑ ሰዓት ያው ከኛ ኮሚኒቲ ጋር ትንሽ ቅራኔ ላይ ነው ያለው ምክንያቱም በኢትዮጵያ የያዙት የጸረ ኢትዮጵያዊ አቋም አስቀይሞናል ይሄ ሚስጥር አይደለም ስለዚህ በዚህ ቮት ለምሳሌ በአብዛኛው ህዝብ ለግለን ያንኪንስ እየመረጠ ባለበት ጊዜ ለዲሞክራቶቹ አንድ መልእክት እየተላለፈ ነው የኢትዮጵያውያንና የኤርትራውያን አሜሪካን ቮት ፎር ግራንትድ መወሰድ አይችልም እንደ ቀላል እንደ ከንቱ መወሰድ አይችልም የፈለጉትን አርገው እኛን ዘግተው የኛን ቮት መጠበቅ አይችሉም ይሄ ትልቅ ንቀት ነው ስለዚህ መናቅ የለብንም ድምጻችን ቫልዩ አለው ቮታችን ቫልዩ ስላለው በዚህ በፕሮቴስት ቮት አድርገን ኃላችንን ማሳየቱ ጥሩ ነው ግን በጣም ስትረስ ማድረግ እንፈልገው just vote like your life depends on it so ማክሰኞ ሰልፍም ቢኖር ሰልፍ ተሰልፋችሁ you have to vote ይሄ መቅረት የለበትም ይሄ ነው ያለኝ መልእክት
ነው ያሰው ጅገዳም አረኛ መሰግናለሁ ጨለማን ከመርገም አንድ ሻማ ማብራት ይቀላል ይሻላል የሚል የአደባባይ ሚዲያ ሞቶ አለንና ሁላችንም ብዙን ጨለማ መከራውን ከመርገም ትንሿን እኛ ማድረግ የምንችለው እንድናደርግ ነው ያሳሰብከው። ሔርሜላ, there's a comment from our Adebabay media ambassador who coordinates on YouTube. EOT said, ሔርሜላ, sister, keep up the good work. You are one of a kind. You exemplify what a true Ethiopian and Tigray is always standing for the truth. We thank EOT for the kind word. Your closing remark, please.
I guess I'll just say, stay hopeful. I think last week, one of the things that was great was we started to push out of Ethiopian media to tell our narrative, tell the narrative of the people. We were on Black News Channel, Sputnik podcast, which is a Russia state media affiliated, but has its own audience. Next week on Wednesday, this is something that Nebi, you helped coordinate. I will be on Breakthrough News, and I'll share that information on all of my social media pages. That is also something that is, I believe it's Lebanese based, at least the anchor that I'm talking to. So this is going to go global. The truth is going to come out slowly but surely. It's too bad that there were so many casualties up to this point, but at least on the narrative point, it's going to get cleared up, and at some point, it's just going to look incredibly ridiculous for the CNNs and New York Times to stay their path. So, and I just want to thank everybody for your support. I see it, I feel it. It is so strengthening to me. I am so glad. I just, when it comes to, it's hard to leave like a stable work, right? Something like CBS, but I just thought, no, this is too important. And I didn't really have a plan just yet, but I just said, I'm doing it. I'm going to jump. And something will catch me, and you guys caught me. A lot of Ethiopians across the world are showing me that support. So thank you. I really appreciate it, and we'll be talking again soon.
Thank you so much, ሔርሜላ, for the great job you do, and we are indebted for you, two of you, for all you do for the truth and for one Ethiopia as a whole and human being in the world. እጅግ በጣም አድርጌ ነው የማመሰግነው ነብዩ አስፋው፣ ታችን ሔርሜላ አረጋዊ፣ ሁልጊዜም ለምታደርጉት ነገር ልብ ያለው ኢትዮጵያዊ፣ ንጹህ ህሊና ያለው ኢትዮጵያዊ፣ ንጹህ ህሊና ያለው አሜሪካዊ፣ ንጹህ ህሊና ያለው ሰው ሁሉ ከናንተ ጎን ይቆማል። እናንተ እውነትን ብላችሁ ለቆማችሁት ሁሉ የሁሉም ሰው ድጋፍ እንደምታገኙ አንጠራጠርም። ሁሌም the truth prevails እና ሁሌም እውነት ነው የሚያሸንፈው ብለን እናምናለን። አደባባይ ሚዲያም ለእውነት የቆመ ነው፣ ለሰው ልጆች የቆመ ነው። አንድ ትንሿን ነገር መስራት በሰው ደረጃ የሚጠበቅብንን እንስራ ብለን ነው። የትኛውንም ዘርና ነገድ ነጥሎ የማኮሰስ ሌላውን የማወፈር አንዳች ዓላማ የሌለው ነው። እኛ ክርስቲያኖች ነን፣ እኛ ሙስሊሞች አሉ፣ ቤተ ፕሮቴስታንቶች አሉ። የሰውን ልጅ አክብሮ የሰውን ክብር አክብሮ ሁማኒቲ የምንለውን ሰብአዊነት የምንለውን ሁላችን አክብረን ውሸትን ጠልተን ሁላችንም ልንቆም ይገባል። ሌላ ሀገር የተተኮሰ መድፍ አስቀምጦ ከደሴ ሲቪሊያኑ እንደዚህ ነው የሚገለው ብሎ በፕሮፌሰር ደረጃ ያለ ሰው እንኳን ሲጽፍ እያየን ያንን ዲባንክ ማድረግ ካልቻለን፣ እውነቱን አውጥተን መናገር ካልቻለን ሁላችንም የቤት ስራችን እንሰራለን ብለን እናምናለን። ስለዚህ ለእውነት እንቁም፣ ከእውነት ጋር አብረን እንስራ፣ የሰውን ልጅ በሙሉ እንውደድ። መልእክታችን ይሄ ነው። ሔርሜላ አረጋዊን በሔርሜላ ቲቪ ፕላትፎርሙ አንድ እንዲሆን ሔርሜላ ቲቪ ብላ ቀይረዋለች። ግን ሔርሜላ አረጋዊ ብላችሁ ሰርችም ካረጋችሁ፣ ሔርሜላ ቲቪ ብላችሁ ሰርች ካረጋችሁ በሁለቱም ይገኛል። ሰብስክራይበሯን በደንብ አድርገን እንጨምር። ነገ ከነገ ወዲያ እውነትን የሚነገር ዛሬ ያዘችውን አቋም ባትይዝ መደገፍ ያለብን ነው። ነገ የምትይዘው እውነትን ባገኘች ቀን ነው ከእውነት ጋር የምትቆመው። ስለዚህ ሁልጊዜም ከእውነት ጋር መቆም ይኖርብናል። ዛሬ ክትር ብለን አንድ ቦታ የምንቆም ሰዎች አይደለንም። ሁሌም ሶል ሰርቺንግ ላይ ነን ያለ ነው ኢትዮጵያውያን በሙሉ። እግዚአብሔር አምላክ ለኢትዮጵያ ለሀገራችን ሰላሙን እንዲሰጥ፣ ለሰው ልጅ ሞቱን ስደቱን መስማት የምናቆምበት ጊዜ እግዚአብሔር እንዲያቀርብልን በደንብ አድርገን ሁላችንም ልንጸልይ ይገባል። ሔርሜላ ቲቪን በትዊተር ገጿም ፎሎ እናድርግ፣ በዩቲዩብ ገጿም ፎሎ እናድርግ። የቨርጂኒያን ምርጫ በተመለከተ ደግሞ ሁላችንም ወጥተን ነብዩ እንዳለው እንምረጥ፣ ድምጻችን እናሰማ። የሚጠቅሙንን በተለይ አሁን ሰዓት ላይ ኢትዮጵያን በተመለከተ አንድና አንድ ያለን ነጥብ ኢትዮጵያን በተመለከተ ማን ከኢትዮጵያ ጋር ቆመ፣ ማን ከኢትዮጵያ ጋር ሊቆም ይችላል፣ ማን የኢትዮጵያውያን ሐሳብ ሊያስተናግድ ይችላል፣ ማን ኢትዮጵያን በስሟ በክብሯ በሉዓላዊነቷ በቴሪቶሪያል ኢንቴግሪቲዋ በፖለቲካል ኢንዲፔንደንስዋ በሶቨሬኒቲዋ አክብሮ ማን ነው የሚጠራልን ነገ የሚወክለን ብለን አስበን ቨርጂኒያ ላይ አንገት ለአንገት የተናነቀውን ምርጫ እንምረጥ መልእክታችን ነው። ደጋግመን ከእንግዶቻችን እንደሰማነው ያንኪን የሪፐብሊካኑ ተፎካካሪ በብዛት ኢትዮጵያውያንን ሐሳብ እያስተናገደ እንደሆነ ብዙዎቹ እዚሁ አደባባይ ሚዲያ ላይም ቀርቦ ተናግረዋል። ይሄ መልእክታችን ነው። ላውደን ካውንቲ ያላችሁ የእናንተ ድምጽ በጣም ያስፈልጋል። አሌክሳንድሪያ ሲቲ ያላችሁም ያስፈልጋል። ይሄ መልእክታችን ነው። እግዚአብሔር ሀገራችንን ሰላም ያድርግልን። የሁላችን ስለሆነች ኢትዮጵያ በአደባባይ እንዘግባለን። መልእክታችን ነው። ስላዳመጣችሁን እግዚአብሔር ይስጥልን። Thank you so much.
Thank you for the beautiful words and the prayers. High five.
Thank you so much.
Bye. See you soon.
Adebabay media yene now. Adebabay media yene now.
Adebabay media yene now.
Adebabay media የሁላችንም ነው።
የኛ ቤተሰብ አደባባይ ሚዲያን ይመለከታል። የእናንተስ?
Do your parents watch Adebabay media?
Watch, follow, subscribe and help አደባባይ። አደባባይ ሚዲያ ለወገንተኝነት ጀርባውን የሰጠ
የዜግነት ክብር በኢትዮጵያችን ጸንቶ ታየ ሕዝባዊነት ዳር እስከ ዳር በርቶ ለሰላም ለፍትህ ለሕዝቦች ነጻነት በእኩልነት በፍቅር ቆመናል በአንድነት መሰረተ ጽኑ ስብናን ያልሻርን ሕዝቦች ነን ለስራ በስራ የኖርን ድንቅ ባህል መድረክ የአፍሪ ቅርስ ባለቤት የተፈጥሮ ጸጋ የጀግ